Oh, yeah. Welcome to the Sunday show here on the line. I'm Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week, Shannon Q with
hi, people.
Those teal specs. Is that they look kind of tealish?
Yeah, I love them. I've taken to ordering lots and lots of glasses. I like glasses, fun accessory.
I have my two pair. This one so that I can see the computer screen when I need to actually read something. This one so I can see my cell phone when I'm actually, because that requires a different thing. And then a none when I'm driving or looking far away. So I think after all this time, I'm going to break down and go see an eye doctor again and see about maybe getting some progressive lenses or something else for old people, since that's what my body is telling me it needs to happen.
But, knock on wood. I don't need progressives yet, but I love me some glasses.
I used to have like better than 20/20 vision and could read street signs from half a mile away. You know, it'd irritate Beth. We'd be driving down the road and I'd be like, hey, have you seen the sign for this road? And I'll spot it. And she's like, I don't even see the sign yet. It's like,
yeah, I'm like Beth. Always have been.
Now, not as good. So welcome, everybody. This is the Sunday show here on the Line Network. The Line is a call-in network. If you haven't hit like and subscribe already, you can probably do that now. I think you might want to test it. If you move your mouse down over that thing, you can let me know in the comments below whether or not it was allowing you to actually like and subscribe as well. This show is our premier Sunday time show where theists and people with supernatural beliefs or other things that we may not as skeptics believe or agree with. It's an opportunity to call in and present why you believe and potentially why you think other people should believe as well. Theists will always have priority on the show. Normally what ends up happening is the show goes live at 2 p.m. Central and we'll get like a couple of atheist callers and we'll talk about something. And then eventually the theist calls will start rolling in. And that looks like what we're actually going to be going with today. There are plenty of other shows here on the Line Network as well. For example, on Mondays, we have Skeptalk, and this Monday's episode will be Erica Gutzik-Gibbon with host Jackson Wheat, who's been on my show, The Hang Up. Wednesday's Hang Up will be myself, and after a long time without him being around, Andrew Seidel will be joining me this Wednesday on The Hang Up.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll be talking about all the things that are going on in church-state separation with an election year coming up here in the United States. I've been eager to get Andrew's thoughts on many things. And so all of you who have been waiting and saying, oh, when are you going to get Andrew back on? The answer is this Wednesday. We'll be doing this. And the Transatlantic Call-In Show is the OG team of Katy and Arden this week. That's Thursday at 2 p.m. Central. So basically this exact time, only on Thursday. And if you are someone who's confused about trans issues, trans rights issues, if you are someone who's proudly transphobic or has been accused of being transphobic and you don't understand why and you'd really like to get some answers, or you're struggling with all this, or you think there's just this one little thing left. I mean, it's just, I'm okay with people identifying and let's be respectful and but I don't understand why we got to ask for pronouns all the time. And I don't understand why, this sports stuff or whatever else. This is your opportunity on Thursdays to call in and talk to two real live trans folks who can tell you their views on this. And it's a rotating set of hosts and co-hosts there, like it is on most of the rest of these. There are other shows as well, and there will be other new shows debuting. You can go to QAnaline.com to lend your support there, as well as joining here and subscribing on YouTube. We will also be starting a handful of debate shows, and the main debate show that we're going to start with is called NBOSS, and it's a 1-hour format. I'm not going to go through the whole format here. We have set up, I think is it May 2nd? Is that the first day?
For
I think it's the 3rd. It's the first Saturday in March. We were talking about the debates,
In
right?
March. Yeah, in March.
Yeah.
Not May, March. I don't know why I said May, but we'll be doing that one on whether or not Jesus ascended bodily to heaven. The format is unlike a lot of other debate shows. It's not going to be two people presenting contrasting point of views as much as someone who sincerely believes something and wants a chance to defend it. They will be able to present their case. Then we will do our best to steelman it, take questions from the crowd. Then whoever the end boss is, on the first one, it'll be me. But after that, it could be anybody. We'll then do a sort of grilling of, here are the questions that I've come up with that are potentially problematic about that. They get to answer all those questions. They get to the last word in closing remarks to try to present their case one last time and get it all done in an hour. So you're not going to have to sit here for 2.5, 3 hours going, why are they talking past each other? You only have to say it for 23 minutes of the hour. Sometimes I make stuff up like that. But Shannon, do we have anything else that you need to announce, or should we just go to calls?
No, not really. I'm still plugging away on my channel. I just did a show with Paulogia the other day going over Gary Habermas's new book because Paul had the audacity to bring his new book into my house, not once but twice. So,
oh my!
so that's what I've got going on.
So you can't have a coffee table, but he can bring Gary's book in?
And it's the size of a coffee table, maybe larger than several coffee tables. It's an enormous book.
Put little legs on the book and set it in the middle of the living room and be like, here, this is what you wanted.
You really could. And then it would at least be useful for something. So maybe I will. Yeah, that's all I've got going on. Excited to be here.
We are ready. I've got calls queued up right now. We're actually going to start with an atheist call, though. John calling from the UK, pronouns are he, him. Welcome to the show, John. You're on with Shannon and Matt.
Hi, John.
Hi, Matt. Hi, Shannon. As the traditional greeting, long-time listener, first-time caller, bit nervous.
Well, you're all right. Don't worry about
it. Especially as I'm your first caller. But
yeah,
bit of background. So I was a Christian for many years. I had a conversion experience, I think, just about when I turned 20 years old. I went to church regularly for a long time, but then because at the same time I realized that I was gay, and that created an awful lot of problems, certainly internally with the church. So I fell away. I've recently reconnected with some people who knew me back then, and in what is a sincere attempt to help me, they because I'm still interested, as I know you are, about determining the truth of faith. Does God exist? If he does exist, why is he so good at hiding? And sure. They lent me a copy of I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, which I'm already negatively primed because I've watched so many people debunking Frank Turek and the book. But in reading through that, he quotes a passage in sort of evidence for the authenticity of the Gospels from Matthew, which I must have read hundreds of times as a believer, but for the first time I read it and something about it really struck me, which is the sheer one-sidedness of if you what does it? I've got it here. But I say to you, whoever divorces his wife for any reason except sexual immorality causes her to commit adultery. And I just wanted to, first of all, hear your take on that, and see whether it aligns with mine, or whether I'm just going way off beam on this.
Okay. Well, the Bible women just generally don't matter in the Bible. There are very few women who are even named. A good chunk of them are just referenced as so-and-so's wife, so-and-so's concubine, or so-and-so's wives, etc. And so I did an entire video on the worth of women according to the Bible and the special different rules where they're not allowed to inherit property, they don't have equal standing to men, and how everything about sex and sexuality is done from the point of view of men as the important part and women as their essential sexual property or familial property. They are in a lower status position. And so the passage, my first thing is when somebody says, but Matthew 5:32 says, don't divorce except for, fornication. And my first response is, why should anybody care what the Bible says about divorce or anything for that matter? But yeah, you're looking at an ancient book that doesn't come anywhere near equality or even equitable treatment of genders.
Yeah, that was my take, and I'm sorry if it's not very unoriginal, but it was kind of like, forgive the language, I know you don't mind, but it's like, holy fuck, this is really messed up. It's kind of, the man doesn't commit adultery, but he causes and that just to me, it's kind of, I mean, I wasn't hoping for much of a way back to faith and belief in particularly the Christian God. And this has just kind of blown my mind as really opening my eyes to, if anyone says, oh, what a great moral teacher Jesus was. No.
Yeah.
Don't disagree.
So, on a wider thing, I think I'm going to have to ask some serious questions about if I want to continue this friendship. I think we might have to just put the issue of faith aside, because I don't think we're ever going to see eye to eye on that.
That's fair to do. You should definitely set boundaries if it's something that's going to be contentious. It's okay to say, hey, like, I want to have a relationship with you, but this is a topic that we don't broach.
Yeah, because the other thing
Totally
is,
acceptable with it.
I don't want to go in being the, quote, angry atheist, and I don't even want to start telling them why what they believe is wrong. And that
Sure.
again feels like a bit one of these. It almost feels like I'm a bit at a disadvantage because of the sort of cultural and social norms about you don't go and tell people that their deeply held beliefs are wrong. And yet I'm thinking, how can I justify my position without doing that?
Yeah.
How can I say,
don't get me wrong,
I can't accept. Sorry.
I'm no longer worried about someone perceiving me as the angry atheist or an angry atheist, because I can and have sat here and not been angry at all and still been accused of being angry. I have, oh, you're an angry, you're bullying, you're doing all these things. Yeah, whether I am or not, that's the accusation. And one of the things that has really irritated the crap out of me over the years is that some segment of Christians in particular view atheists, if they can find any way to say that you're just angry and that's the reason why you're rejecting God, they'll do that. And if they can't pin anger on you, then there's some sin in your life, or there's something that's hardened your heart, or somebody hurt you, or somebody did something wrong to you, or you had a bad experience at church. They will come up with any way they can to dismiss you and everything you're saying, and never have to actually address or even entertain the idea that you are a sincerely unconvinced a non-believer, that you just, hey, I don't see the evidence as warranting belief in the things that you do. Where's the evidence? And they, I'm sitting here for decades now, and we're still just, oh, you're just angry or sinful or whatever else. Anything to keep the most correct answer off of their lips, which is, oh, wait, I don't have a good reason to believe this. Because if I did, instead of trying to psychoanalyze you and saying, God's given you over to a reprobate mind, I would then begin to acknowledge that I don't have epistemic warrant for some of this.
Yeah, that's very wise.
Yep.
Well, I think that's all I needed to ask at this point. I don't know if there's any resources or any place, because as I'm going through all of this stuff, I feel like I've got so many questions and I don't quite know where to take them.
Well, I mean, you can call into shows like this and talk on occasion. There's also recoveringfromreligion.org, and plenty of online groups. It's funny to me, and I don't mean this in any, I don't know, I'm not trying to be weird or anything. I love the UK. I've been there many times, and religiosity in the UK is different than it is in the States. And so it's always strange to me to hear people calling from the UK talking about problems with more fundamentalist type believers, or more, where they're having difficulty interacting, just because that's not my experience and it's not my perception. And some of it is a false perception, in the same way that I hear people from Europe calling to say, oh, you're in the United States, where everybody's running around with a gun. Oh, you're in Texas. They're all strapped. They got guns on them. You can't go anywhere without guns. I've lived in Texas since 1995, I think. Apart from a law enforcement officer, I can count the number of times that I've seen people walking around with guns. Well, I've seen it, but it's not like a regular thing. But that's the perception that makes the news. And so it's always interesting to me when somebody calls from the UK with a problem like this. But
yeah, I mean, I can say from my experience that we do have a wide range. So we've got some religious folk who are very liberal, very progressive, very open to the idea of whether it's LGBTQ issues or whatever. And then we've got people who are very conservative, and obviously I only get the impression I see through particularly YouTube of probably the most extreme of the American evangelical, particularly the sort of fundamentalist Baptist type people. But I mean, I'll have to keep an eye. Have you got any plans, Matt, to do any more lecturing in the UK?
I was supposed to do a debate at Oxford Union, but then COVID hit and that got sidelined, and I haven't heard back from them. And so there's no current plans to come to the UK. But as soon as I have some, I'll post about it on social media, and I'll definitely talk about it here.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for the time. I'm sure you've got lots of other calls, so
yep.
I'll let
Thanks,
you get on. Thanks a lot.
All our best.
Good day. Good luck.
Oh. So now that the menfolk have pointed out how sexist the Bible is, do you have anything you'd like to add to that? I mean, surely this has been a topic that you and I've discussed together and independently a gazillion times, which is, I'm always confused at how there are strong-minded, independent women who still are like, oh, I love me some Bible. And I'm like, if you are actually living the way the Bible suggests, you wouldn't even be able to tell me that you you love you some Bible. You would be sitting over in a corner letting the men folk talk. It's wild that
I think it's a
like
lot of
Stockholm
dissonance.
syndrome.
And I think it's a lot of it is lack of Bible knowledge too. So many people receive their faith from authority figures in their churches and their lives more so than actually like delving into what the text actually says and what it means at face value. So it's I think that probably has a lot to do with it. But if you actually sit down with it, it's a hard read. It's a hard read if you're a woman, for sure.
I actually saw somebody share something. There was a meme that somebody sent around, and there's like 15 guys standing leaning up against a fence, and this is, you know, in the late 40s, early 50s, and there's an attractive woman walking down the sidewalk, and all the guys are there, you know, got their fingers in their mouth doing, you know, the wolf whistle and everything else, and they're like, once upon a time it was a fine and acceptable and a compliment to whistle at attractive women as they walked by. And there were like 8,000 comments on this Facebook thing, and a significant portion of them were from women wishing to go back to that time where when they're walking down the street is just, and I was like,
why?
Don't get me wrong. I'm sure that there are plenty of women who would appreciate something like that. And, you know, if that's what you appreciate, cool. But to have that be the default in society where I don't get it. But
wishing to be objectified is a strange hill to die on. I don't understand that really. I mean, I kind of guess that I can understand wanting to be perceived as attractive or be complimented or thinking that is a compliment in some way. And that making you feel good and you wishing to have more of that. Maybe I can get that, but I can't get on board with desiring objectification ever.
Yeah. And, you
Just
know,
can't.
I get that when we talk about things like human sexuality, and especially when we get into things like people's kinks, there are people who have, you know, fantasies about all sorts of things that are illegal and immoral in normal circumstances. And then you get into, you know, BDSM play or whatever. What people like, and I think that some people are equating two things, and I think you're right about that, is that, oh, it would be nice if people could just, hey, tell me I look nice. And once upon a time, maybe there was slightly more in the way of manners where even if you were like wolf whistling to, you know, there wasn't so much of an accompanied threat with it. And yet we entered a realm where both perhaps, well, I can't say because I don't have statistics in front of me, where the prevalence of sexual assault seemed to either increase, or we reached a point where reporting on sexual assault was such
I think that's more
that
likely.
we became more aware of it. And all of a sudden, what some people saw as a harmless, oh, you know, the boys will be boys, is, hang on, there's more to it than that. And some people were just fortunate enough to not have suffered the negative consequences of that. So it's just like, oh, well, gosh, you can't even tell anybody they're hot anymore without people losing their mind. Yeah, actually you can.
There's effective ways to compliment people without doing something like that to a stranger in a public place. Like, I don't know. I don't know why anybody would want that. It just seems strange to me, especially when where like your safety is something that should be paramount. And that's generally indicative of somebody kind of being aggressive towards you. Like usually in those sorts of circumstances where people are catcalling women, they're aggressive. Like they're not, and I don't understand what they're attempting to get out of it too. Do they think a woman's going to turn around and go, "Oh, golly gee, thank you.
Yeah.
Can we have a conversation? What's your phone number? Here, give me your Insta." Like that's wild to me. Like, especially considering the climate. Like usually when that's taking place, it's not taking place for, you know, wholesome reasons.
There was a great bit on last night's Saturday Night Live, a little miniature game show called Why'd You Say That? And it was basically, they had 3 mock contestants up there, and they would show somebody's Instagram clip, and then they would show what the contestant said, and then be like, why'd you say that? And so there was like a picture of AOC, and they were like, and you replied, Pretty hot for Congress, but mid at a party still would smash. Why'd you say that? And the guy's like, well, I got hacked. Oh, it was, my butt accidentally typed it. And he was like, well, I was thinking if I said something like this, we'd get into an argument and then we'd start talking and then we'd realize we had something in common and then she'd start making out with me. And I was like, oh, this skit is absolutely perfect. getting into the mindset of online trolls and shit posters. But all right.
Funny.
We have theistic callers and atheistic callers, and let's just jump right in. We have calling from Switzerland, Dick, pronouns are she, her, wants to talk about the ontological argument for God. So welcome, you're on with Shannon and Matt.
Hi, Dick.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi.
So, yeah, it's a great pleasure to be on this show. And yeah, I guess would consider myself a theist, but I cannot decide which religion yet. But I am theist because I'm rationally persuaded by philosophical arguments, right? As opposed to most of other religious people, right? They are converted because of the religious experience.
Okay.
So, are you familiar with the ontological argument, or do you want me to present it premise by premise?
Oh, I'm happy for you to present your version because there is no such thing as the ontological argument. That's just a category of arguments that try to argue for the existence of God from the proposed ontology of a God. So whichever one you find most convincing, go ahead and present it and we can discuss it.
Right. I'll present Plantinga's version of the ontological argument, right? The modal
Alvin Plantinga's modal logic. Yeah.
Right. That uses S5, which I know that you reject.
Yep.
But I'm not exactly sure why, but we can go into that later. So I guess without giving too much context, right? I'm referring to metaphysical possibility here, right? That something is metaphysically possible just in case it genuinely can exist or be true, right? So this not only respects logical consistency, but also the nature of things. So water being H3O instead of H2O is metaphysically impossible, right? Because it goes against the nature of water, even if there is no strict logical contradiction for water to be H3O. So let's get into it. So premise one, there is some possible world, right, where maximal greatness is instantiated. Premise two, there is some possible world where a being has maximal excellence in every world. And by the way, maximal excellent being, right, means omnipotent, omniscient, and perfectly good being. And a maximally great being is a maximally excellent being in every world. So after that, so I'll repeat myself. Premise one, there is some possible world where maximum greatness is instantiated. Premise two, there is some possible world where a being has maximal excellence in every world. And premise three, if there is some possible world where a being has maximal excellence in every world, then the being has maximal excellence in every world. Premise four, if there's some being that has maximal excellence in every world, then it is omniscient, omnipotent, and omnibenevolent in every world, right? So that is that's by definition. Premise 5, therefore some being has maximal excellence in every world. And premise 6, therefore some being is omniscient, omnipotent, and omnibenevolent in every world. And premise 7 is that therefore some being is omniscient, omnipotent, and omnibenevolent in the actual world. So that means God exists in the actual world. So that would be the argument.
Cool. Where's God then? Apart from
So God
apart from a philosophical argument that concludes that a God exists in the real world, what other evidence or reason do we have that a God exists in a real world?
Are you indicating that it is insufficient to say that God exists in the real world?
Yes, I don't accept S5, which is where you get from it's possibly necessarily true that an omnimax God exists in some world to it's necessarily true that an omnimax God exists in the real world. I don't accept that. But what would convince me that a God exists is not a philosophy. I can create a well, you can use Curry's paradox to to demonstrate with a logical argument that God exists. You can use the same thing to show that God does not exist. I mean, that's just, and you're not going to find a problem with it. There's no flaw. I just did a video this last month talking a little bit about Curry's paradox. If this sentence is true, God exists. If this sentence is true, God does not exist. Both of those reach a conclusion. You're not going to find, there's not a fallacy in there. And so when you start talking about possible worlds, I'm not convinced that discussions about possible world actually lead to any conclusion about this world. So where's the evidence for the God, apart from, because you can prove anything with certain logical arguments. Where's the actual evidence for God? What do we know this God's name? Do we know this God's thoughts? Do we know anything at all about it? And also, I'm not convinced, by the way, that it depends on how you define omniscience, omnipotence, etc., whether or not that's even possible. So the first premise of a being with maximal evidence, or sorry, a being with maximal excellence, or is possible. I'm not convinced that that's possible. That's one of those possibilities that is, hey, we can't say it's impossible, so we'll just go ahead and claim that it's possible. But possible in that sense, as in you can't show that it's impossible, doesn't mean it's possible in reality at all.
Yeah, that was my point. Like anything that isn't definitionally impossible would then have to exist based on that argument. Wouldn't it?
Let me just address that last point then, right? Because it seems that you're saying that I'm conflating a logical possibility with metaphysical possibility, right? You're saying that just because you can see that a particular being does not have any logical contradiction does not mean that it is metaphysically possible for the being to exist. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. That's part of it, yeah.
Okay. And I would say that I'm not concluding based on that, right? There are further arguments to support that, right? One example is Rasmussen value argument from,
No.
perceiving that there.
You don't get to
So I'm not
just say,
conflating that.
hang on. You don't get to say, I'm convinced because of the ontological argument, present the ontological argument, and then when we point out a problem with it, go on to a different argument. Does this different argument present evidence to support the conclusion that a God exists in reality?
Yes, because it supports.
Then why didn't we start with that one? Then why didn't we start with that one? Let's deal with that argument that relies on actual evidence to suggest that a God exists in reality. What's that one?
I would say that we didn't start with that argument. Is because this is just a sub-argument, right? Supporting premise one of the modal ontological argument. So I have to present the modal ontological argument first in order to present the sub-argument supporting premise one, right? And I don't know what you mean by actual evidence, because I think that philosophical evidence is actual evidence, and I would disagree that you can.
I'm talking about empirical evidence. Because you can construct a logical argument, a philosophical exercise that is not tied to actual empirical evidence about reality. I want actual empirical evidence for the things that I believe.
So what's the empirical evidence that the external world exists?
So now we're going to discuss whether or not there is a world. I accept that I'm interacting in a world. I cannot demonstrate it at all. I can't provide empirical evidence for it. I can just talk about, this is my experience. I am convinced as much as I can be that I'm not inventing this, that I'm not aware of any solution to the problem of hard solipsism. So there are things that you accept pragmatically as presuppositions. I accept that logic is reliable, and I accept that I'm in a reality that I share with other people. I can't demonstrate it.
Right. So you do agree that you do not need empirical evidence for everything that you accept or believe, right?
For everything that's not a presupposition. You don't get to presuppose God.
right? I'm not doing that, right?
Okay, then why
I'm
are we
looking
wasting
at-
time
so-
talking about this? Why instead of presenting, I've asked you for empirical evidence for God. You suggested that
Mhm.
you have it, and since you suggested you have it, you've mentioned no empirical evidence, and you've just tried to do a tu quoque of, well, Matt, you accept things without empirical evidence, and I point out I accept necessary presuppositions for it to serve
Right.
as a foundation for reality and logic. That's not the same thing as saying, I believe there's an all-powerful being that exists beyond space and time. That is not something that is necessary to accept. So are you going to present the empirical evidence, or are you going to keep trying to pretend like your foundation for accepting God is on the same footing and the same necessity as someone accepting that there's a reality?
I would say that it's on the same fundamental basis of intuition, right? And
I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit about people intuiting a God. You can intuit a God all you want. Nobody should accept a God based on intuition.
Right, but I'm saying that you can accept certain beliefs, right, from the foundation that if you are epistemically justified, right, based on your intuitions for certain
No.
beliefs, clearly
No, Dick.
we can have
Dick,
certain
do you
beliefs
have
without
empirical evidence? Do you have empirical evidence for God or not? I am sick to death of people saying that they have empirical evidence for God, and then in the next step, challenging other people's beliefs on other issues, and then in the next step, going to intuition. This is an absolutely garbage line of thought. Can you demonstrate with empirical evidence and argument that a God exists or not?
I think you can ask Shannon. I did not say that I have empirical evidence. I said that I think that actual evidence can be philosophical evidence, right? I didn't say that I have empirical evidence, right? And I said that empirical evidence isn't a necessary condition.
Is that the same as admitting that there's
our
no
beliefs.
empirical evidence? Like when you say that, is that the same as admitting there is no empirical evidence? There's only what you perceive as philosophical evidence for a God? Is that a concession you'd make then?
Right, I can make that concession, right, for the sake of the argument
Okay.
that there is no.
It's fair to say that you, in your position, would say that there is no empirical evidence for God. You can only come to a conclusion that a God exists philosophically as a jumping off point.
I guess I wouldn't make the positive claim that there is no empirical evidence.
Are you aware
God,
of
right?
any? Are you aware of any empirical evidence sufficient to warrant belief in a God?
Yeah, I would say I'm not aware, right? I don't know.
Cool.
Okay.
But
Yes.
There we go.
That gets through Shannon's question and your response. You are currently unaware of any empirical evidence that is sufficient to warrant belief in a God. And I'm going to say that until that changes, you have nothing to offer me on the subject of belief in a God, because I'm not going to accept a God claim without sufficient empirical evidence to warrant believing it.
yeah, but just because of you being inconsistent, right? You accept some beliefs
No,
purely
no,
on philosophical evidence, and others not on.
No, you don't get to say I'm being inconsistent. It's about the nature of the claim.
Right?
Well, so could I cut through this?
Yeah.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good.
So I think if I'm understanding correctly, Matt is saying that, everybody needs to have some sort of presupposition, right? Like you'd agree with that, right, Dick? Like we're
Yes.
all operating on some sort of presupposition. So Matt's presupposition is that, there's a reality that exists. And I thought I heard that the laws of logic, are consistent and make sense. So those would be his presuppositions. Do you think that that's an unwarranted presupposition to have?
No, I think that they are warranted, but I'm saying
Okay, so
there are some presuppositions that are more warranted than the others,
I'm just going to cut through this for a sec because I think that this is where the crux of it is. So you're saying that he's inconsistent because why? What's inconsistent about that? Because I think that you've agreed that that's it's a fair presupposition to have. You in all likelihood probably have the same or a similar presupposition about reality existing. So you're operating from the same position. He's just saying, I will not, on top of that, I won't, that is my presupposition that reality exists. I'm not willing to extend that to God and presuppose God. You're saying, well, I don't presuppose God. I'm using some sort of logical argument. So I don't see any inconsistency there, right? Because you're not saying you
Right.
presuppose God. He's saying you shouldn't presuppose God. So I don't see an inconsistency for Matt.
His inconsistency
There's not an
is
inconsistent
that he,
application there, right?
I will argue that there is, because he is on one hand, right, insisting that I must have empirical evidence for my belief, right? But on the other hand, right,
Is he saying that you have to have
he thinks
empirical
that
evidence for your belief that reality exists? No, 1 sec. What is he
Right.
saying that you need to have empirical evidence for your belief that reality exists?
No, that's not
He's
what
not,
he's saying,
right?
but he's right.
No. Right,
So-
but that's his presupposition, so it's not inconsistent. Otherwise, he would be inconsistent if he asked for evidence for anything, right? He's
Okay,
saying
so why
the claim
is
that
it that-
you're making is something that is outside of this presupposition. So it's something that needs to be supported with some form of evidence.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what that
But
claim
I'm-
is. That claim could
yeah.
be that a God exists. That claim could be that, you ate toast for breakfast. Those are both claims that he's saying, in order for me to believe them, to adopt them, to think
Right.
that they are true, I would like evidence to support them. And that is consistent. He's
Yeah.
saying that a
Thank you
God
for
claim
clarifying-
is that type of
clarifying that.
claim. It is the type of claim that requires evidence. So unless you're saying that a God claim is not the type of claim that requires any evidence, and I don't think that's what you're saying, then he is consistent.
Right.
Well,
I'm saying
I think
that
he is saying that.
it's okay for the God claim
Maybe
to be
yes.
supported by purely philosophical evidence, right? There
There you
isn't
go.
a need for empirical evidence, but he's insisting on that for having empirical evidence. And so I
That's
would
what
say
he
that my
needs.
presuppose.
Just because you don't feel like you need it, that doesn't mean that he's being inconsistent.
Yeah, you're free to believe whatever bullshit you want to believe for whatever reason you want to justify, but I'm never going to be convinced that a God exists unless there's empirical evidence to support it.
Okay, then what is that basis for that? What's the justification for that? That there must
The basis for that,
empirical evidence.
would you let me answer? The basis for that
Right.
is that God is not a necessary thing for me to presuppose. I don't have to make a decision. I have to either decide to engage with reality as if it's real, whether it's real or not. That's about how I act. I'm not saying reality is real. I'm saying I need to act as if reality is real because there are apparently consequences to not acting as if reality is real. I have to. I can't justify the foundations of logic are inviolate, and yet they seem to be, and it would be absurd to suggest that they are, or that they're not. You would have to assume they're true to prove that. I don't do that for anything that isn't necessary to function. If you say there's a magical being that exists outside of space and time, I can say, I'm not convinced because you haven't presented sufficient evidence to warrant believing that. And your response then needs to be, oh, well, either here's the reason why you should believe it, even without evidence. This is why it's a necessary presupposition. Or you should just acknowledge that you and I are not going to believe the same things for the same reasons. Because I don't see anything at all about the God claim that says you need to make up your mind right now, even though you don't have sufficient empirical evidence to warrant it. But that's not true for logic or reality. I do have to make up my mind about how I'm going to exist in reality.
So would you say that the belief that the external world exists is not epistemically justified? It's simply a pragmatic presupposition.
Correct.
And can I
said that 10 minutes ago.
Right. So you can't have any confidence in the truth of that.
What do you mean you can't have any confidence? My confidence is proportional to the evidence, and my confidence is proportional to the necessity of a presupposition. I can't say that it's true. I just say that this is what is most reliable. I have to make some decision. If I'm stepping out into the street and I see a bus coming towards me, I have to make a decision of, am I going to act as if that bus is real? Or am I going to ignore the information from my senses and act as if the bus is not real? I'm going to choose to act as if the bus is real, because all of my interactions in the world that I experience demonstrates that there would be consequences to that. Now, it could be the case that all of my experience is wrong. And when I step out in front of that bus, it will go right through me as if it's mist, and I will then be transported out of the matrix into the real world. But I have no reason to believe that's true. And so via something like Occam's razor of not multiplying entities unnecessarily, I'm just going to accept for now that the reality I experience is real until someone gives me a reason to think it's not. I don't have to do that for God or fairies or dragons or anything else.
What I would say is that belief can be actually epistemically justified, right? It is not simply a pragmatic thing. Many philosophers will appeal to the epistemic principle of phenomenal conservatism, that it is reasonable to assume things as they appear, except when there are positive grounds for doubting this. So, right, my belief that the external world exists is epistemically justified. It is true.
It's
right?
not.
And
It's not
prima
epistemically
facie
justified. Is your epistemic justification based on your senses and experience?
It is fundamentally based on my seemings. Right? It
On
is based
what?
on my senses. And then fundamentally
based
it is
on
based
what?
on my seemings, my intuitions. It is based on my seemings.
Intuitions are not intuition. It does not count as empirical evidence.
Yep. I'm not saying that it is. I'm saying that it is reasonable to assume
Dick, stop.
the things that
Dick,
as they
stop.
appear.
Dick, stop. You were saying that your belief in an external reality is epistemically warranted.
Yes.
By what?
By the epistemic principle of phenomenal conservatism. It's like a principle of Occam's razor.
That is
right?
not. So all you're doing is saying the same thing that I said. In that, let's not violate Occam's razor. I clearly experience a reality. Until someone demonstrates that the reality I experience is false, it is the path of least resistance and the one that is most consistent with my experience to operate as if reality is real. But that doesn't mean I am empirically justified or epistemically justified in believing that this is the real reality.
Yeah, but if you do not accept phenomenal conservatism, right, then very few of your beliefs or no of your beliefs will be justified, because these are the fundamental beliefs, right? All of our beliefs rest upon.
No. You're talking about what I've already said. I just said that as a matter of practical pragmatism, it makes sense for me to accept reality and logic. There's nothing pragmatic about accepting God. So why can we get back to you talking about a good reason to believe there's a God? Because the fact that there's a reality that I experience that I can't demonstrate is the ultimate real reality is a pragmatic acceptance. It is not. Why would it ever be the case that acceptance of a God is as necessary pragmatically as the acceptance of reality?
I didn't say that. Right? That I'm presupposing God.
Stop,
what I'm saying.
Stop. If it's not, then why are you talking about whether or not I fucking accept reality? The issue here is whether or not there's good reason to believe a God. If you're admitting that there isn't as good a reason to believe there's a God as there is for reality, then belief in reality is irrelevant to the belief in a God thing. You are just waving around red herrings. Can you get back to demonstrating that a God exists and stop pretending that the fact that I have to make the exact same pragmatic conclusions that you do about reality and logic somehow puts us on equal footing when you're intuiting a God?
Right. My point was that, right, there are certain beliefs, right, because I differ from you fundamentally, that some of my basic beliefs, like the external world existence, are actually epistemically justified, right, based on my intuitions. And therefore, some of my beliefs, some of my beliefs can be.
Okay, I'm muting you. When you say that some of your basic beliefs are epistemically justified by your intuitions, my answer is no, they're fucking not. The fact that you think your intuitions warrant belief is about you. I'm asking what would justify it for everybody else. I don't have an intuition of a God. And if I did have an intuition of a God, that would not be sufficient. So are you going to present any reason that Shannon and I should be convinced that a God, because your intuition will never be sufficient to warrant it for us, even if you think it's enough to warrant it for you? Do you have anything beyond intuition?
Yes, I have philosophical evidence, but you just outright rejected it, right? You just said that you must have empirical evidence for God.
Oh my
I don't
God.
see
Stop,
as
Dick.
justified, right?
Dick, do you have something beyond intuition? What is it?
Yes, a logical argument for God.
A
Right?
logical argument for God. I can do that with Curry's paradox. I can present it. If the sentence is true, God exists. That's a logical argument for God. If you couple that with intuition, you can say, hey, there's a logical argument that supports my intuition. But that is insufficient to mean that my belief in God is actually warranted. There's no necessity for me to assume it or rely on my intuitions. If you're talking about a God that exists and interacts within reality, then there must be empirical evidence to support this. Do you have that?
Curry's paradox is valid but unsound, right?
You can't
It's not
demonstrate
a-
that it's unsound. You can't. The only thing you can do is demonstrate that it can lead to contradictory conclusions, but there's not an identifiable flaw with it.
Right, contradictory conclusions by classical logic does not have a truth value. I'm sure you know this.
I do know this. What I'm saying is, when we're talking about the existence of a thing in reality, you saying you intuit the thing and can make a logical argument will never be enough to convince me. Do you have anything else?
I mean, I can't see why
Do
you
you
have to have
have
empirical evidence.
anything else beyond your logical, ontological argument and intuition? Yes or no?
Can I ask why you do
Can
not accept
you
S5?
answer? Hang on, I'm going to mute you again. Why is it that I can spend all this time asking you the same fucking questions over and over again, and you don't even answer the simple yes or no question? So I'm gonna try this one more time. Apart from your personal intuition and an ontological argument, what other reason do you have that someone else should be convinced that a God exists?
Okay. So are you asking for empirical evidence? Then I
Jesus
already answered that I do not
Christ.
have empirical evidence.
Dick, I'm going to make this as simple as possible. Apart from an ontological argument that is not supported by anything empirical at all, and your personal intuitions, what reason could you possibly present for us to believe that a God exists? I can't make it any clearer than that.
Mm-hmm. Can I clarify a point or no?
Jesus fucking Christ. Why can't you answer the question?
I mean, I do not have. I mean, that's what I came into the show, right? It is to support an ontological argument for God, and you're asking me to present some other arguments. I mean, there are.
Dick, I'm going to mute you again for the 15th millionth time. I'm trying to do a show here where you present your case for something and we interact about it to see where we agree and where we don't agree. Why is it that every time I reject something that you said is not sufficient for us and say, have you got anything else? Do you ask a question about what I believe, or can you clarify? Why can't you answer the question? I'm going to unmute you. And then as soon as I unmute you, you hear a little beep here. I'm going to ask you the question one more time. I would like for you to answer this question. Apart from a philosophical argument that isn't supported by empirical evidence, and your personal intuition, do you have anything else that you think should convince me and Shannon and any other person that a God exists?
Yes, I have other arguments.
Cool.
Right?
You said yes. Hang on. You said yes. What is it?
but it will no longer be the ontological argument, right? So it will be a different argument altogether, right? It will be the cosmological argument, right? It could be the
Oh my
could be the
God.
contingency argument.
Okay.
Can
I don't
ask
have
why
anything
you
else for
disagree
Dick.
with S5? Can I ask why you disagree with S5? You
No,
haven't
you
supported
can't
that.
ask me shit because you didn't answer my question over and over again. I don't accept it because I don't accept it. It's none of your fucking business.
Wow, so you're not even going to justify that.
I don't need to justify anything. You're the one calling in to say that you have a belief in God, and I'm asking you for the justification. And your only justification is intuition and philosophical argument and an absence of empirical evidence. And I'm saying that's not enough to convince me, and I don't think it should be enough to convince anybody else. Period.
Yeah, I said it is enough because I really defeated your Curry paradox argument that
No,
because
you
it leads to
dumbass.
contradictory
I'm not
conclusions.
using Curry's paradox as a real thing. I'm pointing out the limitations of philosophical arguments and how you could make an argument that seems to demonstrate something, but that's not going to be enough for me because I need empirical evidence before I'll believe a fact, an empirical fact about what exists and interacts with reality. Period. Do you have that or not?
Yeah, but you have just
Do you
accepted
have that or
the
not?
Curry's paradox does
Do
not
you
show the
have that or
limitation.
not? Do you have that or not?
Have what?
Empirical fucking evidence for God.
I thought I already addressed that, right? I already addressed that I'm not aware of empirical evidence, right?
Correct.
And when I
Correct.
Right?
Shut up. Shut up.
Like-
If you don't have it, and that's all I'm going to accept, why should we keep talking?
because your non-acceptance of philosophical argument, right, that warrants the belief in God is unwarranted. That belief is
I
unjustified.
didn't ask
Right.
you, Dick, for your opinion about whether or not my disbelief in God is unwarranted. You don't have to justify disbelief. You have to justify belief. The claim that it is reasonable to believe something is what needs justification. Until that happens, I am not convinced that a God exists.
Right.
This is
but
not your show. This is not your show to ask me, well, why don't you believe in God? I'll tell you why. Because there isn't sufficient evidence for a God. Period.
Yeah, I'm saying that you necessitating empirical evidence for God is unjustified. That is a positive belief.
No, sir,
right?
it's not. Does God exist in a way that God interacts with reality in a detectable way at all?
I mean, may or may not, right? You
May or may not. May or
Right.
may not. So until such time as we have some way to detect God, I can't believe that there's a God. And I'm sorry that you can.
But just reiterating your principle. You're not justifying why empirical
I don't
evidence
need
is
to
necessary for
justify
God.
it. I don't need to justify it, Dick. It's justified by
That's
the
your
fact that the
principle.
burden.
That's your
Shut
principle.
up! Shut up! It's justified by the fact that the burden of proof is on the people who are asserting a claim.
But you made a positive claim that empirical evidence is necessary for God.
No, I
Right.
didn't. No, I didn't, Dick. What I said was, I'm only going to accept empirical evidence for God. I told you about what I would accept, not what should be accepted. I'm sorry that it's too fucking difficult for you to listen and be precise about what I'm saying, but I told you repeatedly about what is not going to convince me and what I don't think should convince other people. I don't think you should be convinced by your intuition, because there are intuitions about plenty of things that are not compatible with the claims of with the facts of reality. And now you're saying you become convinced for philosophical reasons of a God that you have no idea if it is detectable in any way, shape, or form.
So you are saying that you are, even if it should be justified, you may still be unconvinced. That's why I heard you say that even if it should be justified, you might still be unconvinced, right?
I'm not convinced that you are correct about what is or isn't justified.
Right. And I'm saying, how do you epistemically justify your principle that empirical evidence is necessary for God?
I'm saying that without empirical evidence, I am incapable of accepting the claim that there is a God in reality, because it is unnecessary for me to make up my mind on that subject in the absence of evidence. Why do you think?
Right, and I'm asking you to justify that. I'm
Nope,
asking you to epistemically justify that.
Nope. Why do you think it's reasonable for someone to conclude that a God likely exists in the absence of supporting empirical evidence? Why don't you think empirical evidence is necessary?
Okay, so now you're asking me to justify the opposite of your claim. And I would say that the reason why I raise intuitions in the first place is to show that some beliefs can be justified solely on philosophical evidence. And from that basis, I hope to let you see that some beliefs can be actually justified based on philosophical evidence. And I argue that God
like what?
is one of
Like
them.
what? Like what? What beliefs can be justified purely based on philosophical evidence?
I just said, right? By the principle of phenomenal conservatism.
Jesus fucking Christ. All right, I'm muting you. We're going to try this one more time. You're saying that there are some beliefs that can be justified based on purely philosophical argument. And I want an example other than the God one, since we don't have to repeat that. What's an example of a belief that can be justified on purely philosophical evidence?
Right? And as I said, right, that's where we disagree, right?
No,
phenomenal
Dick,
conservatism, our hands exist.
Jesus fucking Christ. I'm going to try this again. Please listen to the question. Things go so much better when you listen to the question and answer the question you're fucking asked. Give me an example of a specific belief that you think acceptance is warranted of merely from philosophical evidence, not a presupposition, but where a belief is warranted. Give me an example.
Sure. I'm thinking, therefore I am.
No, I think, therefore I am, the cogito ergo sum. This is Descartes basically saying that even though I can't demonstrate that the reality that I experience exists, even if I'm being deceived, there must still be a deceivee, which means I must be exist in some form, even if the reality that I experience isn't real. But as Hobbes pointed out,
justified.
Let me finish. But as Hobbes pointed out, that entire argument is predicated on the primacy of reason, which you can't demonstrate.
It's based, as I said, you can demonstrate okay, how about you demonstrate why is it predicated on the primacy of reason?
Because it's an argument, and all logical arguments are contingent on reason being reasonable, which you can't demonstrate.
Right. I would say that even if the evil demon, right, is actually deceiving my rational capacities, there is still a deceived me. So I would say that it is not dependent on the primacy of reason.
You're wrong. You have made a logical argument. How do you know that logic is a good way to make an argument that leads to truth? You can't. It is a presupposition. We can't justify that logic is inviolate. I said this 18 minutes ago.
And for something so fundamental like that, as I've said, you have to appeal to your fundamental seemings, your intuition. This is
no, sir. No, sir. No, ma'am. You don't get to. I'm sorry, what?
Michael Humer, right, is one prominent philosopher who accepts this principle, who defends this principle, and many philosophers.
Dick, when I point out, when you say the cogito demonstrates that you exist, and Hobbes has pointed out that this is based on the primacy, or based on an assumption about the primacy of reason, then we say we can't justify the primacy of reason. We can't justify that reason's reasonable. This is an assumption. You don't then get to say, yes, but I can intuit it, when we've already talked about how I'm not going to accept your intuitions on this.
Sure. So you're just gonna be a full-on skeptic, right? About
Yes,
the
I'm a
fundamental
skeptic.
basis of
Yes,
reality.
I'm a skeptic. Yes, I'm a skeptic. I've said that a billion times over the years.
Right. But you can't ground your belief, basically, except for a
I
pragmatic
don't need to
basis, right?
ground
You can't
my
ground your
belief.
belief.
I don't need to ground my belief, and I've already acknowledged where my beliefs are ungrounded. Do you have anything else other than garbage? Because I'm saying, as a necessary presupposition, I assume that logic is reliable, and it continues to demonstrate that it is. And as a necessary presupposition, I assume that I interact with reality, and it seems that that's the case, but I have no way of proving it. I don't just run around saying I'm justified because of my intuitions. Could your intuitions be wrong?
Right? It could be, but it's well within the principle of phenomenal conservatism.
The principle of phenomenal conservatism is also predicated on the presupposition of logic. The fact that you find something reliable doesn't mean it's reliable. So a logical argument, a syllogism, is valid when true premises lead to a true conclusion. 100%, no way out of it. But whether or not that's true is a presupposition at the foundation.
Right?
Okay?
But
it's not an intuition.
The thing is, right? So
your intuition doesn't
that,
justify anything.
Okay, so is the presupposition, right? Is that reasonable? Right? Is that presupposition reasonable?
No. Is it reasonable? Not in the same. If your presupposition is that reason is reasonable, then you don't get to say that presupposition is reasonable. Yeah, you are at the foundation of. You don't get to say something's reasonable if you're talking about the foundation of reason. What criteria
you face
would
the same problem as me? You face the same problem because
no, I don't face the same problem as you, Dick. No, Dick. No, I don't face the same problem as you because I don't say that I'm convinced that a God exists based on intuition. I don't face the same problem as you.
When we go to the foundations of knowledge and you keep asking, how do you justify this justification or this justification? Ultimately, you have to end off with that some basic beliefs are justified. Right? You're saying,
no, Dick, no. I don't say that the basic beliefs are justified. I don't believe properly basic beliefs even exist. I'm saying they're not justified.
Wait, Dick, do you think that a presupposition requires a justification?
Depends on what you mean by presupposition, right? Isn't just an assumption?
Dude, listen, depends on what you mean by presupposition. So you've been talking about philosophy. You obviously understand philosophy. Presupposition, if I'm presupposing something, do I have a rational justification for it? Do I need one?
I guess
Can I even have one? Can I even have one if it's presupposed?
Definitionally, no, you can't. Right? You can't.
Right. Thank you. Okay, there we are. So you literally you can't have a rational justification for a presupposition.
Right. But
you
guys' point is that some presuppositions are more reasonable than the others, right?
No.
We're saying that some presuppositions are more necessary than others. Like I need to decide whether or not the reality I experience is real in order to function. I don't need to decide whether or not God is real in order to function.
Bingo.
Right?
Well, thank you for finally acknowledging that.
You're saying
God
that
would be some component of reality. One sec.
But you're still justifying it based on pragmatism, right?
Dick, one sec, because I think we're almost there. We're presupposing reality exists, right? God is an aspect of reality. Right? God exists within the reality in your paradigm. Right? Right. So presupposing that reality exists is necessary to function within reality. God existing isn't necessary to function in reality. Like, I don't need a belief in God in order to walk
Mhm.
down the street and talk to people and eat food and, drink out of my enormous
Mhm.
cup. I don't need a belief in God to do that. I do need, however, to into the fact that reality is a thing that I'm operating within, right?
Mhm. Right. So
Okay.
yeah, so
right.
you're not
So
really
they're
doing
not the
epistemology
same
here.
thing
You're
then. One of them is necessary.
right.
The other one is not necessary. We can agree on that, right? One is
In a
necessary to
sense that it's
function. One I
pragmatic.
have to believe in order to function.
Right.
The other one I don't. Okay, I think that's
Right.
basically
So
what
that's
Matt is
pragmatic.
saying,
Mm-hmm.
but you're
Yeah.
pushing
So you're
back
saying that
against
it's
it, and I don't quite understand why.
yeah, because he's essentially saying that it is reasonable for us, right, to presuppose certain things, right, because of pragmatic reason, right?
We're saying it's
And
necessary to
it's
presuppose
necessary.
reality. Yeah.
So is it reasonable then? Is it reasonable? Should a
No,
rational
not
person
not
presuppose
really,
it?
because there's no solution to the problem of hard solipsism, right?
And I'm saying that there is a solution, and
So
my
it's
view
not
is
really
that it's
reasonable.
Okay, whoa, stop. We need this. Pause everything. Mark down the time. Dick has just told us that she thinks there is a solution to the problem of hard solipsism. What is that?
right.
What's the
Phenomenal
solution?
conservatism.
Oh.
Phenomenal conservatism. It is prima facie justified or believing P if it seems to an Asian as if P, right? Until there is a better defeater, right? In absence of any
That
defeater, an
assumes that
Asian has
you
some
need,
degree of justification.
but that just
So
assumes that your perception is accurate, and that is so faulty. It's crazy. Like, our perceptions are vastly inaccurate and faulty, and are
it's not
subject
really
to all kinds of
perception
interventions that
and
result in them being way off, and we know that for a fact. Like, we just know that
Mhm.
for a fact. So if your answer to hard solipsism is, I feel like reality's real, and that seeming that's based on my experience as an individual
right.
is sufficient, that seems bananas to me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There's a pragmatic sense under certain circumstances where someone could say that phenomenal conservatism is basically what I was talking about, where, hey, you're not going to violate Occam's razor. Generally, if it seems to be this way, it's likely to be that way, but only in circumstances where you need to make a decision now, or the consequences could result in your demise. If otherwise, phenomenal conservatism. So, Dick, I do magic shows. If you come to my magic show and it seems to you that I'm doing real magic, wouldn't the principle of phenomenal conservatism justify you believing that I'm doing real magic?
But there are positive grounds for doubting
Well,
it,
that
right?
was a yes or
Because
no
I know that it's a
question.
magic show.
You don't, okay. If you come to, let's say you go see a, name a psychic medium, the biggest douche in the universe, John, what's
Right.
his name? You go see somebody who claims that they're talking to the dead, and it seems that they are able to speak with the dead and get information from the dead. Would the principle of phenomenal conservatism justify you believing that this person is actually speaking with the dead?
No,
Why not?
it wouldn't. Because based on our understanding of the natural world, right, and the scientific advancement of the science of all of reality, right, there are positive grounds for doubting that this person is indeed talking to the dead, because our understanding is that once people are
This is
dead,
super important,
you
though,
can't
Dick,
communicate
because
with
now
them.
you're admitting that you
No.
need to appeal something outside of your intuition in order to assess whether or not something is real.
Yeah,
Right,
so
it is consistent with phenomenal conservatism, right? It is
No, it's
consistent because
no, it's not, because the thing you're appealing to is something that you can't demonstrate and is wholly consistent with another thing that you're doing, which is, if there is a God, isn't there also some chance that we have souls that persist beyond our bodily demise?
I'm not sure about that. I'm agnostic about that.
I'm not. Well, I don't know why you're. So you're sure there's a God, but you're not sure if there's a possibility for souls.
I mean, there might be a possibility, but I'm not sure that it is real, right? I mean, both
I'm not sure either, but I hold the same thing for God. But here's the thing: if somebody sits down at a Ouija board and they start asking it questions and they get information, and it seems to you, based on all of your knowledge and experience, that they are actually getting information from someone who's deceased, then the principle of phenomenal conservatism would warrant you believing that they're speaking with the dead, right?
Absent any defeaters, right? If there is no defeaters, but our scientific understanding of the world provides a defeater.
Absent any defeaters, you would be justified in believing they're speaking with the dead, right?
Prima facie, yes. Some degree of justification.
And my position is, no, you're fucking not. You are not justified in believing they're actually talking to the dead. It is not just merely an absence of you personally having defeaters. It is an issue of, are there defeaters that are unknown? You don't just get to, by default, assume. This is the problem with phenomenal conservatism, is that it lets in too much. It lets in anything and everything that you don't have a defeater for, and it definitely lets in anything that humanity doesn't have a defeater for. I have potential defeaters for Ouija boards, things like the ideomotor reflex. I have potential defeaters for the notion of a soul persisting after death, basically when we talk about how the soul is a completely dead concept. But absent those things, phenomenal conservatism means that everybody's first intuition about what the likely answer is warranted. If you think 5,000 years ago that lightning bolts are coming from the gods, then phenomenal conservatism warrants that belief. If you think, hey, I don't know how that person made that other person levitate. I don't know anything about wires or lifts or anything else. It appeared to me that they're levitating. Then phenomenal conservatism suggests that you are warranted in believing that this person actually defied gravity. That's the problem with it.
Mm-hmm. Right. But I mean, I guess the philosophical definition of intuition, right, is not simply a wild guess, right? You can't just intuit anything, right? It has to be this intellectual appearance. So I'm using that to show.
I didn't say it was. If you're not going to argue with what I've actually said after we made it all this way, then I don't feel that you're an honest interlocutor. Once upon a time, it was reasonable to look up and think the sun went around the earth.
Right.
That is consistent with.
You say it's reasonable, right?
Hang on. Wasn't that 100% consistent with phenomenal conservatism to intuit that the sun went around the earth?
Right. It is.
And it was wrong, right?
Right. After defeaters.
Yes.
After defeaters.
No, sir. No, ma'am. It was wrong from the beginning. They just didn't know it.
Sure. We do not need certainty for knowledge. Knowledge is ever evolving. It's provisional. Right?
Dick.
Why?
Dick. We're talking here about the epistemology that you're trying to use, phenomenal conservatism. And you're trying to suggest that a method, PC, phenomenal conservatism, we'll just shorten it to that. You're trying to suggest that method is a sound epistemology, despite demonstrations that it can, will, and does lead to false conclusions and support false conclusions.
Right. It is not infallible. No epistemology is infallible. Show me one epistemology that is infallible.
Wrong. Assuming the preconception, the presupposition that logic is reliable, a valid syllogism is valid. True premises lead to true conclusions all the time by definition.
Okay. So why should I accept that, right? Why should I accept that?
You do.
But why
That's
should
painful.
I?
What
Epistemically,
you do though, don't you? You do, right?
my point is, if you reject
Do you?
PC, it leads to
Well, see,
radical skepticism. It leads
all
to
anybody,
radical
all anybody
skepticism.
needs to ever pay attention to is what questions the callers refuse to fucking answer. Ignore everything they say and focus on what they refuse to answer. The fact of the matter is, you do accept that a syllogism is valid when true premises lead to true conclusions, because that's what we know by definition. Whether or not logic is inviolate or not, we don't know. But you accept that. And when I finally get you to the point where you have to acknowledge that what you just said about the reliability of phenomenal conservatism is contradicted by the fact that you also accept that there is something that is perfect, and you won't answer that.
Right? But I'm saying by you rejecting PC, you are leading to radical skepticism. You cannot justify
It's
your
not
fundamental
radical
beliefs.
skepticism. You don't just get to fucking call it radical skepticism and pretend like you've said anything about a lack of justification. My objection to phenomenal conservatism is that it has no demonstrated reliability, that no conclusion reached on the grounds of phenomenal conservatism is any more reliable than any other conclusion from that. It's like saying, I walked in and found a dead body and the butler was standing there with blood on his hands. Therefore, it's reasonable for me to conclude that the butler did it. That's not true.
Yeah, absent any defeater,
No,
defeater, prima facie, you're justified.
you don't. No, Dick.
Prima facie.
Absent any defeaters, the correct position is you don't have enough information to reach the conclusion. And there's no requirement that you reach a conclusion right now, absent sufficient evidence to warrant it. You are using phenomenal conservatism as a crutch to smuggle in everything that you intuit and would like to believe. It has nothing to do with epistemic
You are also
work.
using it fundamentally. You are also using it fundamentally, right? Otherwise, it will lead to radical skepticism. You cannot ground any of the beliefs.
Dick, one sec. I have a question for you. Maybe this will clear things up for me. So your phenomenal conservatism, is that a reliable way to discern the truth of reality? Yes or no? It's a yes or no question.
Yes.
You're inconsistent. You're inconsistent. You just admitted that at best, it's a way that you can lead to justifying beliefs that you have, even if they're wrong. Absent defeaters, right?
Right.
Right. Are you aware of every
Yeah, prima
defeater
facie
for every idea that's ever existed and ever will exist? Which would mean that you just
No.
know everything. Okay, right. So
of course not.
it's not a way for you to find truth at all. It's a way for you to justify something that you currently believe based on your intuition. It's just philosophy wrapped around, this is what I believe, until somebody can disprove the thing that I believe.
Right. My
Right.
claim
That
is
is not a good
everybody has to use
epistemology.
it.
That's not a good
Everybody
epistemology.
has
It's
to.
completely inconsistent and it leads to wrong conclusions consistently. It would lead to
But
wrong
it's the same
conclusions
thing-
consistently.
Consistently? No.
Why would you want to
doesn't,
adopt
right?
an epistemology? This is wild to me that you've admitted leads to incorrect conclusions.
I mean,
Consistently
science
leads
also
to incorrect conclusions.
science also leads to incorrect conclusions.
No,
right?
we're not talking
But
about science.
more,
And I'm asking you why you would adopt an epistemology that you admit leads to incorrect conclusions. You're calling
because
us
this
saying that you're
right.
hanging your hat on an epistemology that you admit leads to incorrect conclusions. And you want us to
Right.
adopt that? That's wild. Why would we? Why would I want to adopt an epistemology that leads me to false beliefs?
The thing that Shannon has nailed here,
Mhm.
and I want to make sure you don't overlook this. Can science be unreliable? Well, technically, no. Scientists can be unreliable, but I mean, we're constantly tuning methods. But what she's pointing out is that you're suggesting that you're willing to use a demonstrably, admittedly unreliable epistemology that does not have a mechanism to correct. Science has a mechanism to correct. What is the corrective mechanism for phenomenal conservatism and intuition?
Right.
The magic
Right.
appearance of
I would
defeaters.
say that exactly the appearance of defeaters, right? It is as
That's
progressive as science.
Dick. That's not a part of the epistemology. Phenomenal
Functionally saying
conservatism.
I'm right unless you can prove me wrong.
It is.
It's not part of the epistemology. There's nothing in phenomenal conservatism that allows you to investigate or come up with defeaters. There is no mechanism there to test things. Phenomenal conservatism is just things are as they seem to be until somebody comes up with a defeater. But the way to come up with a defeater is science. The way to come up with a defeater is a sound epistemology. If you're saying you're going to just go with, you might as well be saying, and you are saying, I'm justified in believing whatever seems right to me until somebody comes up with a defeater, and it's not even part of my epistemology to have a method for coming up with a defeater.
I never said that PC was a sufficient condition for epistemology. I said it was a necessary, right, but insufficient condition.
It's not necessary.
Right? I never claimed that it was.
It's neither necessary or sufficient. I don't have to rely on it.
I'm saying that it is necessary because ultimately you have to rely on it because
no, I don't.
Even if you say that it is pragmatic, right? You said that if you say that it's pragmatic for you to believe in that external world exists, how do you know that? How do you? I
don't know it. I haven't claimed to know it. I'm talking about whether or not I'm convinced that this is likely the case versus whether or not I'm convinced that I need to act in accordance with that, as I pointed out almost an hour ago.
But there must be a reason why you said it was pragmatic, right? There must be a reason.
Because I'm going to fucking die if I don't.
Okay, how do you know that? How do you know that?
I don't know that. I'm saying that is what the reality I'm experiencing says. And I'm unwilling to challenge that. I am not going to walk out in front of a bus or light myself on fire in order to try to entertain the suspicion that I'm not in a real reality. If you want to do that, you can. I don't recommend it. But I'm not making a statement that I know. From the very beginning, we're right back at the beginning. There is no solution to the problem of hard solipsism. I'm not saying that there's any way to demonstrate that reality is real. I'm not saying there's any way to demonstrate that logic is inviolate. Those are two presuppositions that I make. And I'm convinced of the Occam's razor, essentially the principle of parsimony, that we shouldn't just run around presupposing all kinds of stuff. And on the subject of phenomenal conservatism, I don't need to presume that my initial suspicion about reality is correct until proven wrong. Instead, I can say, I experienced something. I have some thoughts about what it might be like. I'm going to proportion my confidence to the available evidence, a la Hume, and not assume that I'm right, and definitely not assume that I know, because that's not a sound epistemology, and phenomenal conservatism has no method for correction and no method of demonstrating its reliability. All phenomenal conservatism, all phenomenal conservatism is saying, I'm going to believe this until some other sound epistemology proves me wrong. That is 100% shifting the burden of proof.
Right? So you haven't answered the question why.
Yeah, I think this has gone on for so long, and we're right back to the beginning. You've already admitted that you need to presuppose reality. You've admitted that you don't need justification for a presupposition. You've admitted that your epistemology is flawed. Like I don't even understand why you're continuing to push back, because you've outwardly given those concessions in this conversation, but you're acting as though you haven't.
It is flawed, but it is progressive, right? As I said, because it is provisional, right?
We started this talking about the ontological argument for God. Like you're essentially, like, the whole point of this conversation is you essentially just saying, well, I don't require external evidence or some sort of empirical evidence, because I can just use philosophy to discern everything I need to about reality. And the epistemologies that you put forth are not an accurate way of doing that. You require appeals to some sort of external empirical evidence that's framed in a better epistemology in order to be able to justify your beliefs Otherwise, you're going to come to false beliefs in the epistemology that you've been hanging your hat on, and you admit that. So
I said,
but I think we've
I'm
we've hit a
trying-
natural endpoint, because the only way to get out of this is you keep circling back and saying, well, can you justify your belief that reality exists? And then we just go back to saying no, because it's a presupposition, and then we start down this entire road again. It's a big circle. It's like just a big frustrating merry-go-round.
Let me try this. Dick, thank you for calling. It was a fun and lively discussion for the last hour. Rather than ending on a bad note, let's just pause right here, because there are other callers who've been on hold this entire time waiting for us to get done since we're circling. Call in another time if you'd like to present something more than I intuit God and I'm justified until you prove me wrong. If that's the best you're going to be able to do, is to say, I'm going to rely on phenomenal conservatism, and because I intuit God and I see philosophical arguments, I think I'm rationally justified.
I didn't say that.
Goodbye.
I didn't say that.
Never mind. I don't give a fuck if we end on good terms. Goodbye.
I use
Goodbye, Dick.
Nope. Goodbye.
That was a wild ride. Wow. That's fascinating.
And my apologies for the sir and any pronoun stuff related to this. My brain went to, we're being trolled. That is more typical, and I shouldn't do that. And so my apologies. And I know that there was problems with that in chat. This is one of the things where when we're trying to be respectful of people's pronouns and other people are potentially not about even the concept. But at the end of the day, if you're going to say, hey, the ontological argument, the modal logic suggests that if something is exemplary, and I don't know why existence is considered a property, which is, that's a main problem with every version of the ontological, or every version of every ontological argument for God, suggests that it is better to exist than to not exist, which is, I don't know what the justification is for that. But the modal logic version suggests that because there's some possible world where this is true, then it's necessarily true. If it's possibly necessary in some possible world, then it's necessary in all possible worlds, which means that it's necessary and real in this one. At the end of the day, if you're just going to say, hey, the principle of phenomenal conservatism is such that if it seems to be the case, then I'm justified in believing it until somebody provides a defeater, until somebody proves me wrong. Okay, you're free to do that. And all of us make use of something like phenomenal conservatism in some small doses, which is why we got presuppositions about reality or logic. But I don't need to have presuppositions about a God. And by the way, this suspicion of I suspect there's a God, and until you prove me wrong, I'm going to go with it. I don't suspect there's a God. I don't have even the baseline suspicion that would be needed to justify phenomenal conservatism. So if you and I, on any subject, whether it's reality or God or do vaccines cause autism or anything, were to say, hey, it seems like this is the case to me, so I'm going to go with it. And somebody else says, well, that doesn't seem like it's the case to me. It seems like this other thing's the case for me, so I'm going to go with that. And you get 4 or 5 people who all seem to have a different suspicion about what their actual answer is. They are all equally justified on differing positions until such time as somebody says, hey, here's a defeater for your position. Well, if your epistemology can warrant equally diametrically opposed and mutually exclusive positions, then the skeptic position, and it's extreme skepticism, the skeptic position is that I'm not going to be convinced until the evidence warrants it. If your epistemology can justify multiple mutually exclusive positions, you don't have an epistemology. If your epistemology prioritizes hunches and intuition, you don't have an epistemology. Epistemology is about how you get to knowledge. And while your hunch may be correct and your intuition may be correct, That's not a path to knowing they're correct. It's a path to convincing yourself that you're correct when you don't have a good reason to. What good is that? Isn't that exactly the same as self-deception? If I'm convinced that my partner's cheating on me and I don't have any way to find evidence, but I'm just going to go ahead and believe it anyway, that's going to impact what decisions I make and how I'm going to act and how I'm going to interact with them. And it can lead to a whole bunch of problems. And if I'm believing something that's not true, there are consequences. And if I'm believing something that's true, there are consequences. This principle of going with intuition and phenomenal conservatism, to the extent that she was willing to do that, is one of saying, hey, I'm just going to go with what feels right to me. Well, to paraphrase or to quote somebody who's just awful and incredibly dry, facts don't care about your feelings. All right.
I heard it wasn't him that was dry. Sorry.
He's that rap song, somebody called him Dr. Dry. Instead of Dr. Dry.
That's great.
Hey, we got theistic callers, and here's the thing. My apologies to everybody who's on hold. We're going to get to you. We'll run longer if we need to. I want to keep having discussions. I would be interested to talk to Dick again if there's something more that she wants to present. Here's the thing. You're watching The Line. That was an hour-long call. I don't expect the rest of these calls to be anywhere near an hour, but we've got stuff to do. And so I'm going to try and be more positive, more generous and charitable. And here, Shannon, we have Michael in Georgia, pronouns are he, him, that has some sort of question for a faith healer or something, or a problem with an argument. Hey, Michael, welcome. You're on with Shannon and Matt.
Hey, how are y'all doing? I hate it when people who are atheists say, why don't faith healers go into hospitals and heal everybody? That's like saying, why don't a chef go to a for-profit restaurant and give out free catering? It doesn't make much sense in my mind. What's your thoughts on it?
What would be wrong with the chef making free food for people in need?
He's not making food for people in need. He's walking into somebody's restaurant and giving out free food. Why would a doctor intrinsically let somebody steal their customer base away?
Because
that is such an American attitude to have towards healthcare. Yeah. Wowzers.
I mean, I am an American.
Yikes.
Are you
an American? Shannon's not.
I'm not.
Oh, you're not? Where are you from?
Nova Scotia.
You're from Nova Scotia? Where's that located?
Oh my fucking God. All right, let's pause for a second here real quick. First of all, whether or not you think healthcare is a commodity, if at the end of the day, the goal is to actually heal people, if faith healers could in fact heal people, they don't need to go into a hospital to do it. They can stand outside the hospital and just heal people as they walk in. They don't do that. They don't heal people in hospitals. They don't heal people anywhere. There has not been a single example of anyone who's been confirmed to be healed by a faith healer. But the reason that atheists say this is because there are people who act as if they can heal people, and they don't do any sort of reliable, testable, scientific demonstration that they've healed anybody. But if you think that it would be just stealing customers from the hospital, you need to go do some work on yourself, because I'd rather see people healed.
More or less,
if I were God and was empowering faith healers, I would be commanding them to run around and heal people anywhere and everywhere they could. Why on earth are you as concerned? Like, if you could stop someone from molesting a child, would you do that? Or would you say, hang on, that's a future customer for a therapist and a rape counselor? Which one would you opt for?
I would call the police, if you mean that.
Why?
That's the...
So if you could...
Wait, could I answer your question?
No, you can't.
Can I answer your question?
You can't.
Okay.
No, you can't. I'm muting you, so here you go. I asked if you could stop someone from assaulting a child, would you? And you said no. Why not?
Well, I meant as in I would stop somebody by calling the police. If I physically
That's not what I
stop
asked.
them, then I
That's
could
not
go.
what I asked. Here,
Pardon me?
Michael, that's not what I asked. Michael, if you're in a room and you see someone molesting a child, you're not going to act to save that child other than to call the
Oh
police?
no, I would definitely save the child.
Cool. Why? Why wouldn't you just call the police and let somebody else handle it? Why wouldn't you leave that as a customer for a therapist?
Because well, number one, I'm not a therapist. Number two, it's a present danger.
And I'm muting you again. Please try to listen to what you're actually being asked. Because first of all, I don't believe you're for real. I think despite the fact that you've sat on hold for an hour and 20 minutes, that you're attempting to troll on this issue. My question was, if you saw a child being molested, would you act to intervene and save that child? And this is an analogy, I'm sorry that you didn't grasp this, to if you were able to heal someone of cancer and you saw someone suffering with cancer. So here's the question. If you could heal someone of cancer, and you were in a room and there was one person who was molesting a child and one person who was suffering with cancer, would you intervene to save the child that was being molested? And would you cure that person's cancer?
Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. The beep kind of
I don't need you to talk about the beep.
Like,
I need you to answer the question. There's two people in the
all
room.
right.
You
So
are able.
So my question,
Let me clarify. I'm going to mute you again. I'm going to unmute you. And as soon as I unmute you, after the beep's over, I'm going to ask the question so that you can answer it. So here we go. You're unmuted and the beep's, there we go. Here's the question. You're in a room. Someone is molesting a child and someone else is suffering from cancer. And you, through your magical powers, have the ability to both cure cancer and save the child. Are you going to cure cancer and save the child? Are you going to just save the child and not cure the cancer? Are you going to do neither?
I'm going to do both. I'm going to cure cancer and then save the child.
Thank you for pointing out the absurdity of your objection to the question about faith healers, because even you recognize that the right thing to do, if you're actually able to cure cancer, is to cure cancer. Now, why doesn't God cure cancer? Why doesn't God's faith healers cure cancer?
It's a case-by-case basis. He does cure cancer. In fact, my cousin was cured of cancer.
How do you know your cousin was cured of cancer by a God?
More or less because I believe in God, and she prayed and she recovered.
So after getting treatment,
pardon me?
After getting treatment.
Yes, most definitely.
Okay, so basically,
I mean, there's people.
Hang on. If I have a headache and I take an aspirin and say a prayer and my headache goes away, is it because I took an aspirin, because I said a prayer, or because some time elapsed and my headache goes away as it naturally would? Which one of those is the right answer?
It could be all three. I mean,
how do you know?
Depending on.
How do you know know that anything other than two of those are possible?
Well, I don't. I'm just taking an educated guess. I don't.
So when you say it could be all three, you're lying because you don't know that it could be all three.
No, I am not lying. I'm taking an educated guess. Just because.
No, when you say, here are the three possible explanations, and then you admit that you don't know that one of them is possible, how is that not a lie?
I didn't say that.
You didn't say what?
You said that. I didn't say that.
You said that you don't know that all of them are possible, but you asserted that they were. Now, if you say that there's three possible explanations, and then when asked to demonstrate that one of them is possible, you say you don't know that it's possible, doesn't that mean you were lying?
No.
Well, what's the explanation then?
My explanation is, just because you take an educated guess doesn't mean you're lying.
Michael, when you say, if I say it's possible that monkeys might fly out of my butt, does that mean that I'm justified in saying it if it's an educated guess?
I mean, it's depending on the situation. If there's monkeys in the room, and I don't know,
Michael. Goodbye, Michael. This. I can't believe you waited an hour and 20 minutes. I can't believe Michael waited an hour and 20 minutes. Hey, you know what, Michael? Your educated guesses need a better education. Your ability to argue needs some tweaking.
Of all the things I thought he was going to say, if there's monkeys in the room.
If there's monkeys in the room, they might fly out of my butt.
It almost killed me. I just almost died. I don't even know what my life is sometimes. If there's monkeys in the room, then maybe. Matt, did you ever think about that? What if there was monkeys in the room? Maybe they would fly out your ass.
Under phenomenal conservatism, if there's monkeys in the room and I don't have a defeater, it's reasonable for me to conclude that monkeys might fly out of my butt. Maybe the monkeys in the room did fly out of my butt. I don't have a defeater for that, except that monkeys don't seem to fit in my butt. But, maybe when they were much smaller, maybe monkeys can magic their way into my ass. All right.
They could. I have a call. If they were in the room. Okay, sorry. I have a call that
I have a call that I would love to dig in on, and I'm not going to at all. I'm going to just keep my mouth shut. Jacob in New York, you're on with Shannon.
Oh, okay. Hi, Jacob. What would you like to talk about?
Hi.
Hey.
Yeah, so I've actually been waiting for you were both on because I both really respect your you guys talk about this. But I just have a question regarding abortion.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. So for quick reference, basically, I just occasionally go through my own beliefs in my head to kind of play as advocate, make sure things are consistent. And I've hit a point where I'm in just like don't know how to progress past. And I was wondering if you guys might be able to help me out with that.
I can try, sure. Just let me know what it is.
Do you want me to go through the whole thing or just get right to the meat of it?
Yeah, just get to the core of what your problem is.
So basically, it's getting to the point in the argument where it's like essentially one person's rights ends where another's begins, and I'm kind of devil's advocate. The pro-choice for me is like, well, any rights a fetus may have will end the second autonomy kicks in, and then the pro-life would respond with, well, I think the pregnant individual's right to bodily autonomy would end when the fetus's right to life is endangered. And I'm wondering, like, how would you solving that?
Why is it the person carrying the child's obligation to sustain another human's life? Why them individually? Is it any individual's responsibility to sustain the life of anybody else?
No, and that's kind of where I get to, like, what I think of, but it just doesn't feel satisfying, where it's like, hey, I understand this is a wholly unique, it almost feels like to declare special pleading as a response to that sort of argument, but I'm also, it just doesn't feel satisfying to me, and maybe I'm just overthinking it, or
It's not satisfying to you. What's not satisfying to you? It's not satisfying to you that somebody who can get pregnant should be obligated to continue that pregnancy? Like should not be obligated to continue that pregnancy?
Can you repeat that? I think I got a little confused there.
So it's not satisfying to you that somebody who's pregnant has the option to end a pregnancy that's not satisfying to you.
No,
To
that's
relinquish
not what
their
I mean.
rights
I
to their
mean,
body.
no, absolutely not. I mean the counterpoint of saying that to assert that they should have to do that would be special pleading. I don't know. Feels like it doesn't resolve the argument as well as I'd like it to, and maybe I'm wrong.
Doesn't resolve. I'm not sure what you're saying is special pleading. Can you clarify what you think is special pleading here?
To assert that there is no other instance in which we would require someone to use their body to keep someone else alive.
I think that's factually the case.
I think that is true. That is as well, and that is how I would respond to someone asserting that one should be forced to do so. I don't know. Maybe I've just been overthinking it this whole time.
You think somebody should be forced to use their body to sustain another person's life?
No, I do not.
You do not. Okay. So I'm still stuck up on. I don't know what you think. What position here you think is special pleading? Like what statement?
The life argument of that someone should be, but as you put it, forced to maintain the life of another human.
Yeah, and the pro-life. Yeah. Oh, so you're saying the pro-lifers, that's special pleading? Yes, I would agree with that. Yes. Because they're saying there is a circumstance where just in this one special set of circumstances, we would obligate somebody to do something that no one else is obligated to do under any other set of circumstances.
Okay.
And I don't understand why it should.
I guess.
And yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Finish your thought.
I've lost track of it, so you go ahead. Go for it.
I lost track of my own as well.
That's okay. So what is it that you're struggling with? Is this like an emotional struggle? It's okay, Jacob. Is this like an emotional struggle because you think that somebody should be obligated to sustain the life of a fetus, zygote, embryo?
At best, I'd argue that if there's an option where this could, like in a hypothetical scenario, we could remove the whatever age it's at and keep it alive and keep the bodily autonomy intact. I think that'd be great if that were an option. And maybe as a society, I could argue we should do that. But like, I'm not going to, like, on the individual rights, I don't think any individual should be responsible for necessarily.
So you think that there maybe should be societal obligations, but that those obligations don't belong to any one individual, right? Because bodily autonomy trumps that obligation.
In the same way that
you can see that they're separate, though, right?
I don't know. Like, yes, I do.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that. Sorry, go ahead.
And get to the
so what is it that you're struggling with? Because it seems like you're agreeing with me for the most part.
Like I'm pro-choice myself. I just, like I said, I just sometimes try to play when I'm bored or whatever. I play my own devil's advocate in my head and try to think through, like, okay, if I were to do this, what would someone who opposes me say, and go back and forth. And I would get to that point of one person's rights ends where another's begins, and I'm necessarily granting that the fetus necessarily has rights, depending on how this goes. But like,
but you could grant the fetus all the rights in the world.
No,
right? You could give the fetus every right on earth, all of the rights that everybody walking around, talking to each other, eating food, hanging out on the streets, and like aware that they're living their lives have. You could grant the fetus all of those exact the same rights, and that wouldn't change the argument at all, right? Because I'm not killing a fetus by removing it from my body. I'm relinquishing its right to use my body to sustain its life. I'm just saying, you're not going to use my body's resources to sustain your life. That's all that's happening there.
if I put on, I put on devil's advocate hat, pro-life, however, and I think the response to that would be that by removing it from your body, you may be killing it.
No,
as
it's
a
circumstantial.
consequence.
Entirely circumstantial. It's not my responsibility to sustain its life. Like if I was, you could go back to the violinist, right? So you wake up and you're attached now, like to somebody, and they're using your blood to sustain that violinist's life. Do you have the right to detach yourself? Even though it will definitely kill that full-grown person. Of course you do. Absolutely. You have the right to detach yourself. It resulting in the death of the fetus has absolutely nothing to do with the fact of the matter, which is that I'm relinquishing its right to use my body, just the same as I could do that to any other human. I can do that in this circumstance. If there was some sort of technology, well, here's a way to think about it. Like you brought this up. If there was some sort of technology that we could like take fetuses out of women's bodies and the fetus could grow to maturity and live a life like the rest of us live, would there be a moral dilemma there? Or would that completely assuage the moral dilemma? That would get rid of it, right? If I could remove the fetus from my body and put it in some sort of artificial womb and it develops and then goes on to live a life, then you no longer have a moral dilemma, right? Right?
Thank you. That helps a lot. Thank you. I feel a bit more confident now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because you see what the problem is. The problem is that we're saying that the woman needs to be the one, the person who is pregnant needs to be the one that's responsible for sustaining that life. If there was some sort of alternative, then there wouldn't be a problem. The problem is that there is no alternative. So we're forcing that obligation onto people in a special set of circumstances. We wouldn't do otherwise. So it's not the removing of the fetus from the body. It's not the relinquishing the right to utilize my body's resources to sustain your life that's the issue. It's the fact that there is no alternative but me, and you don't like that. So it has to be me because it can't be anybody else, and that's not okay. I get to make the choice of what I do with my body, not anybody else. And if there was some sort of alternative, then that's a society problem. Society wants to develop that sort of like external womb. And if I have an abortion, like, I mean, that's a whole different moral conversation. It's like besides the fact. But it's not the relinquishing. It's the fact that we want to obligate women to continue pregnancies because there is no alternative but them. And I am not an incubator.
No. I think I just needed to maybe I just need to hear someone for my suspicions to make me feel a little more confident. That I do feel more confident now. So I thank you for your help and your time.
Yeah, no problem, Jacob.
Matt wants to say anything, by all means, chime in.
I don't need to say anything. But
that was probably playing chess.
I played a game of chess.
I thought you might be.
It's a way of making sure that I don't jump in no matter how much I might want to.
Like having a fidget spinner.
It is. Chess is my fidget spinner. Thanks so much, Jacob. I hope that helped. Glad it did.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
Yeah, it's don't get me wrong. Any other day, I'm happy to take questions on abortion, talk about abortion issues, do all this, but I don't know why. Why would I need to? I mean, Shannon's always given answers on that subject where I was like, yeah, that's what I think, and put better. So cool.
Oh, thanks.
Well, I don't have a womb.
Important topic to discuss.
But by the way, when I do that, I am not one of those people that falls into the, men should stay silent about abortion. No, it's an everybody issue. You can have your position on it. And what we need is more people without wombs who are advocating for the bodily autonomy of people with wombs. Just like we needed more people advocating for voting rights for people who didn't have voting rights and things like that. But at the end of the day, why the hell should I need to chime in when there's somebody who knows the subject better than me? Although that was probably true for the call with Dick too, and I couldn't stop myself. As soon as we get into the
I
philosophy,
disassociated like
geeking out.
4 times during that call.
See?
I exited my body.
I'm here so that Shannon can dissociate during the philosophic calls after she's already made her brilliant point at the start of the call that we end up getting back to 43 minutes later. Yeah. All right. Let me, that's okay. Here we go with Elijah in Philadelphia. Pronouns are he, him. We're talking a little bit about losing faith. So welcome, Elijah. You're on with Shannon and Matt.
Hi. How are you two doing today?
Lovely, thank you.
Good.
Yeah. So, when I was talking with the person who put me on the line, he informed me that I'm actually an agnostic theist, which I didn't even know was a thing. So that's something I just learned today.
Cool.
Okay.
But yeah. So basically, all right. I'm gonna tell you a little bit about what's been going on lately. All right. So back in June, I was diagnosed with pericarditis, which is a form of heart inflammation. But recently, when I went to my cardiologist, he told me that most of it is gone and that my body will handle the rest. And past few weeks, off and on, I've been experiencing like episodes of what's called SVT, where like you experience heart palpitations. And the doctor said that it's probably from the leftover inflammation in my heart that's causing that. And a few years ago, a very devout woman at my church, who's more devout than anyone that I know, caught COVID, and she refused to take the vaccine because our pastor was anti-vax and he believed in the conspiracies around it, and she ended up passing away. And the whole church was praying that God, Jesus would heal her, and he didn't heal her. So that was a huge blow to my faith back then. That was the first strike, the strike against my faith back then. And recently, my grandfather passed away from congestive heart failure. My mom is very devout as well. And she was praying for him heavily, and God didn't heal him either. And people have been praying for me for my healing, but I'm almost healed anyway because doctors help, medication and stuff. So. But yeah, my faith is just falling like a sack of potatoes, and I just want to ask, how do I deal with like people like my mom? Because like today, I told my mom that I was going to go to church and have the pastor lay his hands on me to try to heal me because I do have a little bit of faith left, but I didn't go. Instead, I went to the emergency room because I was woken up out of my sleep this morning because my heart was beating so fast. But once I got there, my heart went back to normal on its own. And the doctor said that some people who experience SVT, their bodies will help them get out of it, and so some other people won't. But yeah. So basically, recently my decision was to go to church, have the pastor pray for me, and if God doesn't heal me from this, then that will be my confirmation that either God doesn't exist or God doesn't care about me. So yeah, and I just want to ask you guys, how do you think I should deal with my mom who believes in God and thinks faith healing works? And today I could tell in her, by the tone of her voice, that she was angry that I decided to go to the emergency room instead of coming to church to get prayed for. And she said, "Well, what did they say?" And I told her they said that it's probably the leftover inflammation in my heart, which is causing the heart palpitations. She was like, "Well, well, that all they said, as if, because like she basically, her belief is that doctors can only do so much, so that's why you should turn to Jesus to get prayed for, So, what do you guys thoughts on all this?
I'm a little bit the wrong person to ask. I'm going to have to answer this as if we were talking about me and my mom, because I don't. That's about the nicest I could be. Because if any other person on the planet ever told me that they were mad that I went to the emergency room instead of going to church to be prayed for, I would read them the riot act. But for my mom, things are a little different. So I'm in a position where I don't have any faith. And I've never seen any evidence that any faith healing has ever happened in any way that could be confirmed at all. And I'm lucky that my parents would also probably say, God gave us a brain and God gave us the ability to understand medicine, and doctors have trained for a long time. You're supposed to go to the emergency room. That whole, God helps those who helps themselves. It seems bizarre to me, and probably to my parents, to suggest, oh, you should rely on faith healers. They would think that faith healing is possible, but not like, oh, this is what you should rely on or whatever else, because at the end of the day, God chooses whether or not he's going to heal you. And so I think what I would do if it was my mom and she was legitimately upset with me for going to the emergency room is say, how would you feel if I'd gone to church, God had decided not to heal me, and I died? Because when you're figuring out whether you're going to go to the emergency room or you're going to go to the faith healer, it doesn't matter so much what you're convinced is possible, but what you're convinced is likely. And so generally speaking, even if faith healing is possible, you're more likely to get a better medical diagnosis that leads to some sort of treatment that can likely resolve a problem at a doctor than you are at any faith healing service ever, no matter what data and statistics you want to use. If you want to pretend that the Lord France healing water has healed thousands, even though there's no way to confirm that, it's still better odds going to a hospital. And when I was still a believer, it was, I went to the doctor because God gave me a brain that was sufficient to realize that was where I was most likely to get accurate help. And anybody who's opposed to that, I think, is kind of falsely inflating their actual confidence level. But I don't know your mom, so I don't know how effective that would be.
Yeah, I heard her say one time, and I never heard of this conspiracy before. I want you guys to tell me if you ever heard anybody say this conspiracy before. But she said that I think she said that she heard from somebody else told her or something like this, saying that certain faith healers in the past have went to hospitals and started praying for people to be healed, and not long after that, those people were never seen from again, as if the doctors in there murdered them or some crap like that. Have you guys ever heard of that before?
No.
No.
No. There would be such a record of that.
If it happened, how weird would it be that your mom heard about it from somebody and nobody in any position of authority seems to have heard of that in order to investigate it to find out if it's true?
Is the insinuation that they healed them and then the doctors were somehow murdering them after they'd been healed to hide the fact that faith healers healed them? Like, what it? I don't even understand what the insinuation of that is.
I think what they're trying to get at is that if a faith healer goes into a hospital and heals some people or even heals everybody, then then the hospitals are going to be out of business. They're not going to have any more customers. They're going to be losing money because they make money off of giving people medications and stuff.
So when
here's the
faith
thing.
healers do go into hospitals, the hospital industrial complex just gets rid of the people that they've healed, so that there's no record of them. Like, that is like all of the moving parts that would be required for that are it's bananas. That's wild.
This is really easy to debunk. Elijah, are there committed Christian doctors, committed Christian scientists, committed Christian universities? The answer to all three of those, by the way, is yes. So why hasn't a committed Christian university grabbed some committed Christian doctors and committed Christian scientists to investigate the claims of faith healing? There would be no way that by the way, I think at least in the United States, a good percentage, if not the majority of hospitals, are run by or founded by religious organizations like Catholic hospitals, because we have problems with them all the time, wanting to perform, extra services on birth matter, so that you end up having 2 funerals for a miscarriage, which is traumatizing to somebody who just had a miscarriage, et cetera. But there's the Templeton Foundation exists to specifically test these claims. And they've done a study on intercessory prayer. They've done more than one, or they reference more than one, but they did a major study on the effects of intercessory prayer. And what turned out was intercessory prayer works, or I guess we should say doesn't work, at exactly the rate of chance until somebody knows that they're being prayed for, and then it works lower than the rate of chance. And the suspicion is that perhaps there's performance anxiety there of knowing that you're being prayed for. But the Templeton Foundation, a biased organization that wants to desperately prove that there is a God, that's one of the reasons it exists, has concluded that intercessory prayer does not work at any rate above chance universally. And so this notion that there's a conspiracy theory by Big Pharma suggests that there are no good Christian doctors, scientists, research facilities, or anything anywhere in the world to counter this. And that random woman in church X heard it from a friend, and that's how the word's getting around.
Yeah. I never really believed in it. It's just that I thought it was wild, but I just understood why they believed it. But I don't know.
It's an excuse for why faith healers aren't all over hospitals healing people.
Yeah. We had a caller earlier.
They need to create some sort of theory to explain away the fact that that's not happening.
I mean, when somebody says, why aren't faith healers healing people in hospitals? The caller earlier said it was, basically the same thing your mom kind of pointed to, well, if they did that, then, the hospitals would lose business. I know quite a few doctors. I have doctors in my family. My uncle was a medical missionary, a doctor and a committed Christian. I know plenty of people who would rather find something else to do with their life than watch people die over and over again in hospitals. Now, does that mean that the pharmaceutical, community, that Big Pharma isn't interested in making money? No, of course they're interested in making money. But I don't think that they're intentionally making people sick to make money. And I don't think they're intentionally slowing progress on cures. And the reason for that is there are enough conditions that don't currently have a treatment, and we're still doing research on those. So now we've got a boner pill or 10. Cool. That condition existed for a long time and people just didn't necessarily talk about it. And now we have treatment for it. And, you can talk about how much money they're making, but we have cured bunches of diseases, apart from rare resurgences of things, like smallpox. Yeah, I know there's exceptions and everything else, but the notion that the fact that money runs the world doesn't mean that there aren't good people who happen to be getting paid to do good. Like, whether you think I'm here doing good or not, I've spent the last 19 plus years engaging on topics that I find are important. And I did most of it for free. I burned up my vacation from my regular job when I first started. I paid to fly myself around to events on occasion. I went broke trying to do this because this was what my mission is. Now I get paid. I get paid for debates. I get a cut of super chats and things here. And so somebody could say, Matt's only doing this so that he can get rich. Well, first of all, not rich, not getting rich. I'm making do. But to say that because money has entered it, that everything then becomes not just suspect, but corrupt, really demeans the fact that not everybody becomes a doctor because doctors are well paid. Some people become doctors because they love medicine and they love healthy people. And none of that's relevant to whether or not someone who supposedly from a God has the power to heal is actually running around healing people, or whether they need some financial motivation. I mean, there's some people who would do the job. I would do this job for free and did. There are people who would be doctors for free and they do. There's organizations like Doctors Without Borders where people are taking whatever money they get treating people in one place to go do free medical service to people who are impoverished. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what else to add, because if your mom is leaning towards conspiracy theories and does not care too much about proving them, apart from asking why you should believe something without evidence, which then undermines the entirety of religion, I don't know what else to add.
Yeah, I think she just believes that faith healing is more effective than the hospital, and that's how I used to believe too. But I don't believe that way anymore, obviously. But
Yep.
So yeah, it's just that it's just aggravating. Just being around somebody that thinks that way. Getting angry with you for not going to get prayed for over going to the hospital. And I remember a few months ago when my heart was experiencing palpitations, I had called the ambulance, and then after that I had immediately texted my mom and told her that I'm going to the emergency room because of my heart, and she texted back saying, did you contact Pastor so and so? Did you contact Pastor so and so? And I'm like, no. Why are you asking me about church? And I just told you that I'm going to the hospital because of my heart. Now I knew why she was asking me that, but I was just so angry. That was my response to her.
That's okay. It's like, why don't you, if it's about kind of like assuaging her insistence, why don't you just say something along the lines of like, Mom, just let God work through the doctors. Like God is going to work through the doctors, Mom. He works in all kinds of different ways. You can pray about me while I'm with the doctors and let him work through the doctors. Pray for him to guide their hands. That way there's still that interaction there, so that maybe she'll kind of ease off you a little bit. Without the conflict,
maybe.
because it doesn't sound like you want to deal with that conflict. It sounds like the conflict is the problem. Because I just want to make sure that you're getting the health care you need. Like, to not be discouraged from actually going and getting the health care you need is what's important to me.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely going to get my health care because I absolutely believe in going to the hospital. I don't believe in not going to the hospital. A few years ago, I told you about the person in my church passed away from COVID for not taking a shot. Back then, during that time, I was also anti-vax because I was watching, conspiracy theories on YouTube, and I was listening to my pastor, But after watching the other guy named Professor Dave on YouTube and stuff, him explaining how vaccines work and all this stuff, I slowly, turned around from all that nonsense.
That's good. Good. I'm glad to hear it. And I hope that your medical journey goes well. And I hope that your relationship with your mom is okay. But like don't let her push on you. Like if she does, and maybe a quick way out is I'm in God's hands already, Mom. And let him work through the doctors. He works in all kinds of ways.
But
let him work through the doctors.
If they're mad that you didn't show up to have someone lay hands on you and pray, does God need somebody to lay hands on you to be able to heal you? Does God need you present for somebody to pray for you? Why couldn't the whole church have had one big prayer thing saying, hey, Elijah's in the hospital today, and while we appreciate the fact that God has given us brains and understanding of medicine, we also believe that our Lord can heal. And so let's gather for prayer. And even if Elijah gets better because of what happened there, we'll still be justified in believing that God did it, whether he guided the hands of the doctor or whether he performed a miracle. The very notion that you needed to not go to the hospital and instead go to church another time. Go there, let them lay hands on you and see what the result is. I have zero belief in any sort of faith healing at all. But if somebody was like, I had my triple bypass, I went to doctors, I got taken care of. But if in addition to that, somebody had said, hey, come to my church, we'll lay hands on you and God will heal you so that you don't even need that operation, I'd be like, okay, cool. Let's go put this to the test. And then when it doesn't work, it's thou shalt not put the Lord thy God to the test. There's a convenient excuse. Well, God God does what he wants to do. I don't see why. What's keeping you from going to church next week?
What's keeping me from going to church next week is the fact that I'm like literally like on the verge of like losing my faith, and I just don't. If I were to like sit there and listen to my preacher preach his message about how God wants to prosper you, he wants to help you, he wants healing for you, he wants salvation brought to everyone in your family, all this stuff. I just have a hard time accepting the message because like I'm literally on the verge of losing my faith. So and I don't feel like standing up for an hour praising and worshiping God when I just on the verge of losing my faith. I just don't see the point in it anymore.
Yep.
Can relate. Been there.
Yeah, I get it. And it's worth noting that when they learn that, they'll use that against you too. It'll be God won't heal you because, he's given you over to your reprobate mind. He knows you're falling away. He knows your faith is weak. He knows you've got stumbling blocks, and he's not going to heal you because you're not right in your walk with the Lord. That will be the excuse they give for why you haven't been miraculously healed. And if the medical community can't actually do significant improvements, they'll use that as an excuse as well, right up until the moment there's something catastrophic, and there to be, see, God's punishing you now for this. It is, they weaponize their belief and their ignorance in a way that I just can't handle.
Yeah.
Also, something just came back to my memory when you said that. So about a month ago, my mother had said that she said the reason why your heart problem still hasn't gone away is because you're still harboring unforgiveness in your heart, and she keeps repeating this over and over again. And when she repeated that the last time we spoke about it a month ago, it had made me angry because that was like the boiling point, because I was so sick of her, saying that. When she had said that, I was like, how do you know that it's that? And I don't even think about stuff like that anymore. I don't harbor hatred in my heart. I don't hate anybody. So I don't know what you're talking about. So what makes you think that? And she said, because the Holy Spirit told me what's in your heart. He told me that it's because
Really?
you haven't forgiven those
Yikes.
people. And I was like, okay. I was like, okay, so you think the Holy Spirit told you that? She was like, yes, I know the Holy Spirit told me that. And so speed up the conversation. I guess 2 or 3 minutes. That's when I yelled out, "I'm an atheist. I don't believe in it anymore." And she almost burst out crying because I guess she thinks that I'm going to hell now. So yeah.
You should ask your mom why
Yeah.
the Holy Spirit didn't tell her you were an atheist. Why on earth would the Holy Spirit tell your mom that you're still harboring unforgiveness when the real issue is you're a godless heathen?
That's a good one. I don't know why. I should have thought of that.
I got to move on, Elijah, but I wish you well. Don't forget you can reach out to recoveringfromreligion.org and feel free to call us back and let us know how things improve. I don't envy your situation on any front, but I'm fairly confident you're going to do all right in the long run. Just don't beat yourself up. You're still sorting through stuff. We all are. Who knows? Tomorrow I might end up becoming a Scientologist, and then I will. I've already given Arden permission to just take me out behind the barn and shoot me.
All right.
Thank you, Elijah.
Well, it was fun talking to you guys. I might call again some other time to talk.
Sure.
Yeah,
Thank
do
you
well
so
for
much.
yourself.
We wish you well. Oh, it's amazing the things that the Holy Spirit supposedly tells people. My mom was told by the Holy Spirit, I don't know if the Holy Spirit told her or if she got a word of knowledge or whatever, that God was going to bless me and Beth, my ex-wife, with a miracle baby in order to bring us back. And it wasn't to bring us back to the fold. And it wasn't too long after that Beth and I got divorced. We're still good friends. We still talk all the time, but I can guarantee you that God is not going to give me and Beth a baby.
And bring you back to the fold.
Yeah, that's not happening.
Yeah.
If I had a penny for every time somebody emailed me to tell me what the Holy Spirit told them that was just laughably ridiculous.
Oh my gosh, me too.
The end times are coming and everybody's going to be, see, the important thing is all the Christians are going to get raptured up and God needs me, specifically me, because I know the Bible and I know Christianity. And so I will be here when the rapture happens and I will be able to recognize that it's actually the rapture. And then I will become a Christian minister again, or for the first time, but become a Christian again and minister to all the people who are left behind by the rapture. I've received that email not once, not twice, but 3 times from 3 different people. 3 different people think that God has specifically specifically set up my life so that I will be here after the rapture to lead people to God.
Most of my emails are people telling me why I deconverted. Like, I know something happened with you. A lot of people email me to tell me that they figured me and my dad didn't get along. I'm like, me and my dad got along just fine. Like, okay,
it's really weird.
All right, I don't know why.
It's the same thing.
Just like throwing tropes at me.
Yeah, get the emails of who hurt you. I'm so sorry for whatever some Christian did to you. That's just constant. All right. We've got a few theist callers I want to make sure we try and get to here. Muhammad in Algeria. Did we talk a week or 2 ago?
Thank you.
Did we talk a week or 2 ago?
Is my mic better?
Hello?
Hello?
Oh, I can
We can hear
kind
you.
of hear
Can
you.
you
I
hear
was just
me?
asking if we spoke a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, we did. Is my
Cool.
mic better this time?
It's a little scratchy still, actually, but go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. So last time we talked, like we talked about just to give it a refresher about like how to find which belief should be worthy of like calling knowledge and stuff, right?
Yep.
And like having watched this channel for a while, I understand that you both are vehemently against believing in something you cannot prove. Like you should not believe in something before you were able to prove it. But like I'm here to appeal to what I would call like a harmless, unprovable supernatural belief. Like last time we talked, I'm sure you remember. I said like if it makes me happy and it's not hurting anyone, then I should believe in it, right? And you said no, like making you happy is not a good reason to believe in stuff, because like you can believe you don't have cancer while you actually have cancer, right? And that would make you feel better, but it wouldn't make you like it would harm you still, right? But what if someone like believes in a god? I just want to throw this out there and talk about it. What if someone believes in a supernatural and their belief, as far as they know, as far as I know, is harmless, right? Like my belief in a god or something that is not within the natural world makes me feel like this means more than it like actually, or like more than it currently seems to mean. And that makes me feel better. And I don't think my belief is hurting anyone, including myself. So I don't think you
Question,
agree
is
with
it
that.
okay to
I
believe
just
unjustified
want to
things
know
if they're
why.
harmless?
What?
So is your question, is it okay to believe completely unfounded and unjustified
Yes.
things if you perceive them as being harmless?
Yes. Is there such a thing as a harmless belief?
I think the beliefs are a result of your epistemology, right? So,
Okay.
could it be the case that you believe something that in and of itself is harmless? Maybe, I guess. I can't say that it's impossible, but you arrive at your beliefs by utilizing some sort of epistemological framework. So if you're consistently believing things that aren't justified, that in and of itself is a problem because eventually one of those is going to be harmful. And most of them don't exist in a vacuum, so they entail other things, right? So belief in gods
Yeah.
are generally couched within the framework of some sort of religion. So not only are they not harmless, they're not, you know, that ambiguous, that non-specific, that innocuous. They entail a bunch of other beliefs. So I guess if the ultimate question is it possible to believe an unjustified thing that is harmless? Maybe. Does that matter? Yes, because what's important is how you come to your beliefs in general. And if you have a framework
Yeah.
that leads you to all kinds of false beliefs, that's a poor framework epistemologically, and you wouldn't. Neither one of us, I would think, would want to adopt that.
But you mentioned like that the framework itself would be problematic because it would allow you to believe in other things which potentially can be harmful.
If you have a
And
framework that
my response to
allows you to
that,
believe all kinds of unjustified
yeah,
things, that's a poor framework, right? And you would have to have that. You would
yes,
have to have that as your framework to believe even one unjustified thing.
I would agree. Yes.
Yeah, so
Yes.
that's not a good framework, though, right?
But like let's set aside like the definition of good and bad frameworks for now. But
Okay.
like, what if you had? Let's stop talking in hypothetical. But like one of the tenets or the conditions I have for arriving at a belief is that it's inherently a bad belief if it causes harm or like if it can be shown to cause harm to someone, right?
Why is
So
that
I
the
think
criteria?
I circumvent that. What?
Why would that be the criteria? For me, if I don't have a
Yeah.
good reason to believe something is true, I not only can't believe it, but anything that would try to convince me to believe it. So every belief that I have is the result of whatever heuristic is going on in my brain. And if I'm believing things that are false, then I have a flawed heuristic. I have a flawed bullshit detector. And so while you might be able to find a specific belief that isn't particularly harmful, like, I believe that the pen on my desk is still functional. If I believe that, it doesn't matter what my reasons are. If I believe that and it's not true, whatever my reasons for reaching that conclusion are clearly flawed. And there's no reason to think that the heuristic that led me to the conclusion this pen works isn't also going to be used for other things. So it's not about whether or not a particular belief is demonstrably harmful. It's whether the method of arriving at that belief can lead to things that are harmful. This is about, let's have skepticism isn't cynicism. It's not, nope, that's bullshit. Nope, that's bullshit. Nope, that's bullshit. Skepticism is, I want to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible. It is, I want to have my internal model of reality as consistent with the reality that I experience, whether it's real or not, as possible. And so if something, a heuristic model in my head is leading me to a flawed conclusion, it doesn't necessarily matter if that particular conclusion is harmful. The method I got there may lead to other things that are harmful. And that's what I should want to change.
Well, I agree with everything you said, but
then you're right.
I don't think that every I don't think that every method should be about every epistemological framework should be about believing as many true or as few false things as possible.
What's the point of them?
So I'm an electronics engineer, right? So I'm an electronics engineer, right? And we have this thing in electronics called a don't care signal, right? Like if this signal doesn't signify some action, I just don't care about it. It's not in my design. And that's basically how I think. Like, it's not being true or false, but like, is it beneficial to my being and to my role within this world or not, right? And so if I believe in a progenitor god, someone that like pushed things to happen so that the Big Bang would happen, right? I don't see how I can like demonstrate that to be true or false. And I don't
then
care
why would
if
you
it's
believe
true or false. I just care if it makes me
so what you're saying is you don't care about truth. You don't care about truth. Well, I do. I care about whether or not my beliefs are true.
I see.
See, my thing is, if there's a don't care signal, that's not, hey, that's something I'm not making a statement about. I'm not saying anything. I'm not going to say, oh, I don't care about this, but I'm going to go ahead and believe, I don't care whether God created the universe, but I'm going to go ahead and believe one did, or I'm going to go ahead and believe one didn't. No, if I don't care about it, I don't have a position on it. Not having a position is not the same thing as trying to make sure that whatever positions you do have are consistent with reality.
And I think believing true things about reality is what's good for you.
What I'm suggesting is like there might be another system where like you believe things that make you a better person and you disbelieve things that make you a worse person. And like if you adopt
do you think
that
that false things can make you believing false things can make you a better person?
Oh, I do.
You think believing false things can
for example, believing that every person is so like believing that every person is inherently good, right? There's no way to demonstrate that, but as per the tragedy of the commons, for example.
Yeah, I don't
But
think
like, as per
that's
the tragedy of the commons,
I don't think that that's true, and I don't think that it leads to good things. I think that if you believe every person's a good person, you're going to find yourself on the receiving end of con artists.
Taken advantage of. Yeah. For sure you'll be exploited a lot with that belief.
If instead your belief is, I'm going to believe that every person has dignity and rights that are equivalent and that we only infringe upon those once there's a good reason to stop it, that is a belief that you may not be able to justify, but that so far it would consistently lead to acting better. Because now if somebody's a con artist, you still hold them responsible, but you do sort of this benefit of the doubt thing. You're like, you know what, I'll take your word just this far, but no farther.
Yeah,
and
exactly. Like, until you prove you're a bad person, you're a good person. Yeah.
No. Until you prove you're a bad person or a good person, you get treated as if you're good. My position isn't you're good until you prove you're bad. It's I'm going to treat you as if you're good until you give me a reason not to. There's a difference in what you believe, because one thing is about believing something about somebody else, and the other one is about believing something about what your actions should be to lead to a better world. And that isn't belief without evidence. And that's supported by evidence. That is supported by evidence. It is supported by game theory.
Yes. And like, okay, so I can argue that a belief in a deity is supported by the fact that it's like still in our brains. Like, our brains are still wired to have a tendency to believe in the supernatural, and that
but we're not.
Must have been good for,
and even if we
for
were
our ancestors, because
we're not. And even if we were, that's not a good way to go about. You know what else our brains are wired for? Rape.
Huh.
The selfish.
Well, yeah.
The selfish.
Violence. Lots of violence.
Yeah, violence, rape, all of those things. That's what our brains. So to argue that because our brains are wired for it, that makes it good. I mean, that's just flawed.
No, like, that it has a benefit. That's like, that's my argument here. And like, yeah.
There are plenty of things that have benefits that aren't good.
Yes.
Robbing a bank has a benefit to me, but that doesn't mean it's a good thing.
I agree. But like, if you can demonstrate that something has a benefit and has no harm on people.
How do you demonstrate that it has, that it has no harm? That's the thing I was talking about.
Right.
Yes.
You don't just get to assume that because you can't think of harm, there isn't harm.
But is that a good enough reason that like you haven't found definitive proof that there isn't harm? Is that a good reason to dismiss a belief that you have demonstrated to be beneficial?
No.
Are you talking about just constructing a moral epistemology? Is that kind of what you're getting at here?
Yeah, like, it's
like what's a good way to construct a moral epistemology?
Yes.
So I think that's a separate
like,
question about and how you interact with reality, like in general, though, right? Because I think so. You believe in a God. Do you think you maybe this is a clarifying question? Do you think you need a God as a basis for a moral epistemology?
No.
You don't. Okay, cool, awesome. Me either. So, is your question how do you come?
Yeah, I don't think any moral person would.
Yeah, there you go. So, is your real question then? How do you decide what is or isn't moral? Like, or what is or isn't good?
My question is, if you can decide that it's not immoral, is it still bad to have it in your brain tucked away somewhere and to actually believe in it while it has no bearing on reality or like your moral being whatsoever?
It would either be bad or useless. One of the two, I think.
Yes, but like, because it makes me feel better, I would take useless. Like if I can demonstrate it to be useless and I feel good about it, I would take useless any day of the week.
So
agree?
you want to believe things that you can't justify because they make you feel good, whether they are or aren't true.
What I'm looking for is a reason to give that up, right? Like what I'm looking for is, can you argue against this position that I have?
If the position is that you like believing things that make you feel good, whether they're true or not. I mean, I can't argue against what
if they're not
what your
harmful
disposition towards
to
things
myself
is.
or other people.
Yes, and I've argued against it every time you've said what you just said, which is if they're not harmful. How do you know they're
Right.
not harmful?
That's what I was getting to.
How do you know about harm that you don't know about?
Mhm.
Okay, so to rephrase my position, just like so it's a little more defined. If no one can demonstrate to me that it's harmful, then it's not harmful. That's how I know it's not harmful.
No.
No,
If,
that's not the way
if
it
somebody
works.
can't demonstrate, if somebody can't demonstrate that God exists, does that mean God doesn't exist?
No.
No, that's a fallacy.
I think we both hold
It's a
that position.
logical
Yeah.
fallacy
Yes.
to conclude that because X hasn't been demonstrated to be thus and so, that it's the opposite. That is a logical fallacy. And so that's the problem with your argument, is that you're saying nobody's demonstrated
But
its
if you
harm.
can't
Oh my God.
demonstrate
No one can demonstrate that I'm
something to be-
right-handed. Does that mean I'm left-handed?
Yeah.
No one can demonstrate that I'm
No,
right-handed.
but
Does that
like,
mean I'm
I-
left-handed?
No, but what I'm trying to say, if you can't
Right.
demonstrate something to be either or, like
Just because you don't currently
like,
know whether something is
you
or
can
isn't harmful
argue for
doesn't
an
mean it doesn't have
assumption,
the
right?
potential.
No, if you don't know whether Shannon's right-handed or left-handed or ambidextrous, you don't get to decide, oh, I'm just justified in believing she's left-handed or ambidextrous or right-handed. The correct position is,
I agree.
I don't know whether, okay, you say you agree, and then you argue fallaciously for the opposite.
Exactly.
No,
You've
I
literally,
say if
stop,
like if
stop,
I don't
stop. You have literally
Yeah, sure.
repeatedly argued that if somebody can't show you that it's harmful, that you're reasonably justified in concluding that it's harmless. This is the same. This is the same shifting of the burden of proof, the same, phenomenal conservatism of going with how it feels to you that a previous caller did. It's fallacious. I'm not saying you can't do it, but it's fallacious.
Yeah, and I would agree if it was my only criteria. Right? Like I would totally agree with you if my only criteria
what other criteria other than your fucking fallacious argument do you have for going ahead and assuming something is harmless?
Okay. So I don't know whether it's harmless or not. I can agree with you on that.
Then we're done. If there's something and you don't know if it's harmless or not, then you don't get to conclude that it's harmless. You are in a position where you don't know. That's it.
Yes. Yes.
Cool. Problem solved.
And like yes. But like if I drink soda out of my fridge, I can't demonstrate that it's harmless.
Oh my God. Oh my God. How can you? No, stop.
No.
Stop. Yes, you're going to stop. Don't go on to another example about, oh, if I drink soda out of my fridge, I don't know if it's poisonous or not. This is not at all the same thing. You've already acknowledged that if you don't know if it's harmful or harmless, you don't get to have a position on it. If you don't know, you don't know.
Yes.
That's the end.
Yes.
So just say thanks and move on.
This has kind of convinced me. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Victory.
Yeah, we reached the stopping point and we managed to get stopped. Thanks, Mohammed. I'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Mohammed. Have a good day.
we got one more theistic caller that I want to get to. There's a couple atheists on hold as well.
Before you do that, I was trying to get you to look at your messages.
Hang on. I've been told to look at my messages.
The voice of God.
That's right.
We must all obey.
I don't know how to answer that.
Okay.
I don't know what it says, so I can't answer it either.
So, we've got Terry in California. You're on the air.
Hi, Matt. How are you?
I'm all right. How's Shannon?
Good.
What's up, Terry?
What? Not a whole lot. I've been listening to your show for quite a while, and I just wanted to call in and talk a little bit. Like, I accepted Jesus Christ when I was 20 years old, and I started applying the principles of Scripture by faith. Because, when you're 20, you don't know a whole lot. And now that I'm down the road, now I'm 54, I'm convinced that that's the Word of God.
Okay. Why?
So what I've done is I tried to apply the principles. Like, I've read it from cover to cover for 33 years now. And you just pick a principle like praying or
slavery,
or studying
like
the Scriptures or giving.
Stoning rape women to death if they don't scream loudly enough.
Yeah, are those the principles you're talking about, like slavery or stoning raped women to death?
And I hear you guys bring that up a lot.
Casting babies against the rocks, committing genocides, killing firstborn sons, drowning everybody on earth.
Not allowing them to preach in church, not allowing them to own property.
Yeah, I hear you guys talk about that.
Yeah, but you've read it cover to cover for 33 years. What's your explanation for all that?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, what's your explanation for all that?
So just like life, and just like the Scripture, there's a lot of things I don't understand.
Then what's the use of it?
Yeah.
If it's incomprehensible to the point that there's no application, then what's the use of it to begin with?
So the parts that I do understand, just like the parts in life that I understand, I apply them to the best of my ability.
Are those parts of the Bible that are not capable of being understood?
I believe so, yeah.
So what's the point of them?
Well,
are all of those parts the parts that are inconsistent with your existing moral framework? So you do potentially understand them, but you're choosing to, act as though you don't because you know that would go in conflict with your existing moral standard, and that's a problem.
And so there's things that happen in life, and there's things that are in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that I don't understand, and I can't give arguments either way, and I can't justify what happens in life and what happens in the Bible. But I'm concerned about the parts I understand about life and about the Bible. And in my experience with life and the Bible is that they're congruent.
Yes. My experience is that the Bible and life are congruent in many ways, that there's sexism and ignorance and bigotry, and that this represents the weak thoughts of people trying to do their best to explain anything. But if in fact there is a God, why won't God clarify the things that you don't understand?
The things that I do understand.
That's not what I asked. That's not what I asked. I asked, there are things in the Bible that you don't understand. Why won't God explain them to you in a way that you understand them?
But there's things in life I don't understand either.
Okay,
Terry?
Terry?
I can't. I'm going to ask the same question one more time, and then I'm going to give up. Why won't God explain the things you don't understand? And he never does for anybody.
I can't explain it. I don't
Seems
know
like
what you want me to
that's a
do
bit
with
of a
that.
dick, isn't he? If God exists and knows that you're having difficulty understanding something in the Bible, and you've been studying it for 33 years, and God still hasn't given you any sort of an explanation that you can understand and explain to anybody else, that God's a prick that we don't need, right?
No, he died for my sins.
How do you know that? And why? Why on earth is dying necessary for your sins? What kind of blood obsession does this God have that he can't just forgive you?
So an eternal soul required an eternal sacrifice.
Why? Why? First of all, Jesus didn't sacrifice shit. That wasn't a sacrifice. He gave up a weekend, if that happened at all, and went on to be God. But why does your soul need a sacrifice at all?
Because I'm made in the image of God. And I'm
That's
a
not an
sinner.
answer. That's not an answer. Why does that require a sacrifice? Why can't God just forgive you?
Because I can't pay for my sins myself.
I didn't say about you paying for your sins. I said, why can't God forgive you? You really have to listen to the question and answer the question that we're asking. Why can't God just forgive you? Why can't
He has forgiven me.
Why can't God forgive you without a blood sacrifice?
Without the shedding of blood, there is no remission of sins.
Why not?
That's what Scripture says.
How do you know that's true?
I've been practicing it, and I look at how life and the Bible
You've been
approximate to each
practicing
other.
forgiveness without blood sacrifice? You're not listening, Terry. How do you know that a sacrifice is required for you to be forgiven?
The only thing I know about God and about my soul is what I read in Scripture.
Yeah. So 33 years you've been studying something and you have no better answer than any first grader that's reading it for the first time, and God hasn't helped you out. Do you think God wants you to call the show today?
Well, I'm just a practical guy. I'm not a theologian.
I didn't ask
or,
whether you were a practical guy at all. I said, do you think God wanted you to call the show today?
I wanted to call the show because I watched
didn't
you
ask
debating.
whether or not you wanted to call the show. Do you think God wanted you? This is, Terry, is English your first language?
English is my only language.
Cool. Do you think God wanted you to call the show today?
I'm not sure what God wanted me to
I'm not
do
sure
concerning
either.
your show.
I'm not sure either. But what was your purpose for calling the show today?
I just wanted to talk to you about, because I know you accepted Christ one time in your life.
Yep.
And Scripture says, once you're saved, you're always saved.
It doesn't actually, but that is one interpretation of what some scriptures say. Yeah.
It says, and I give unto them eternal life, and they shall never perish.
Yeah, but there's also passages about apostasy and the unforgivable sin.
Only the blasphemy against the Holy Ghost.
Yeah, which I don't think I can commit, but there are Christians who think they're going to see me in heaven, and there are Christians who think I'm going to hell. I don't think either is going to happen because there's no evidence for either. But if all you wanted to do was call in to say that you've been studying the Bible for 33 years and you don't know it very well and don't have explanations for everything, or anything, I don't know what the purpose of the call is.
Well, that's why God gave us the instrument of faith. Is because
what is
faith?
What is faith?
It's the evidence of things not seen.
No, faith isn't evidence. If I ask you why you believe something and you have actual evidence, you give me actual evidence. You don't say I have faith. Faith is the excuse people give when they don't. Faith is the excuse people give when they don't have evidence.
Well, that was true when I was 20.
No, truth
I
does.
was.
No, Terry. If it was true when you're 20, it's true now.
I agree, but I didn't have any experience. Whereas now I can look back, like now I'm my future self.
No, Terry,
when
we
I
were
was
talking
20,
about faith. Oh my God. Okay. We were talking about faith. Why are you calling? Are you able to demonstrate anything at all about your religious belief being true?
So the reason I called is to say that faith, we have faith because we don't have complete knowledge.
No, the notion that you have confidence in the absence of certainty, it doesn't mean that you have faith, and that's not an explanation. I'm asking, do you have any way to demonstrate the truth of anything that you're going to say about God or Christianity?
So all I know, this is the facts. The fact is, we don't know everything. So we have,
you don't know anything,
because by default we have to go by faith.
No, we don't
have complete
No, we
knowledge.
don't.
You don't. You can
No,
say
we
I
don't.
don't know, Terry. You can say I don't know.
But when we say we don't know, then how do we move forward if it's not by faith?
You look for
Find out.
actual evidence.
Right.
But
Try to
that
find
right
out.
there takes faith. But
No,
that right
it
there
doesn't.
takes a faith
No, it
to
doesn't.
think that you could discover the evidence.
No, it doesn't. You're just wrong, Terry. Finding out how reality works is not a faith-based operation.
Because you have to first believe you can actually discern that. And that's an act of faith.
No, we have evidence that we've discerned things in the past. Like we've seen methodologies that work and they help us interact with reality. That it's not the same. I know that
it
you
is
want to be able
bizarre.
to make an equivocation, but they're not.
Like I remember,
You're calling
Matt,
us.
I remember
You're calling us from California on a cell phone or a regular phone or a computer using some massive technology because of what we have discovered by exploration, not by faith.
Yes, I agree. But the first step in exploration is
No,
the faith that
accepting
there
things
is
on
something
faith
to
is
be
determination of knowledge. I won't accept that.
So in any case,
it's like
instead
saying
of
I've gone this far and I will go no further. I will not even bother finding out.
in any case,
I'll just
setting
believe whatever
aside
I want.
all of the distractions, do you have a way to demonstrate anything you believe about God to be true?
All I have is my experience. And
Do
I
you
keep going
have-
forward.
Do you have any way to demonstrate that what you believe about God is true? That's a yes or no question.
I mean, it's really not a yes or no.
It absolutely fucking is a yes or no question, Terry. Do you or do you not have actual evidence to support that what you think about God is true? There's a yes answer and a no answer. Literally the only
Yes.
options. Cool.
Yes.
Give us
I
that
have
evidence, please. Present us the evidence that confirms what you say about God is true. We're ready.
I have the evidence that satisfies me. And that's what every person has to determine for themselves.
Terry, fine. I'm going to reword the question. Do you have sufficient reasonable evidence that should lead any reasonable person to believe that what you say about God is true? Yes or no?
Yes.
Then present the evidence that you think should convince us and stop tap dancing around.
Well, maybe my words aren't straight because this is my first time calling in. But anyways, that's
You've been studying. No, stop, Terry. You've been studying this shit for 33 years, cover to cover. You've decided to call in to the premier atheist call-in show on the planet. And all we're doing is asking you, are you able to demonstrate the truth of what you say? Finally, after 13 minutes, got to a yes. And now we're asking you to do what you say you can do. Present the case that confirms the truth of your position on God. That's it. It's a whole show. That's what the whole thing's about. Go.
We are able to demonstrate that we all move forward by faith because we do not have complete understanding of tomorrow.
Oh my God. Terry, I specifically asked you for evidence that what you said was true. And instead, you went back to the bullshit that you said before about how faith is required. Give me the evidence or I will end this call.
Matt, is that a true statement, though?
Terry, give me the fucking evidence now, if anything other than my evidence for God comes out of your mouth. The call is over. Your turn.
Allow me to ask you a question.
Nope. Goodbye. I do what I say I'm going to do. If I say I'm going to hang up on your ass, I'm hanging up on your ass. If I say I have evidence that I can present, I will present the evidence when asked. You claim that you have evidence and you're not presenting it. You're unwilling to present it. You want to just dance around. And the truth is, if you've studied this for 33 years, and by the way, you were supposed to be calling in to talk about the King James Version and how it's the only acceptable version for the English speaking audience. And I was looking for an interesting thing about that. But considering you don't seem to know or understand the Bible, your thoughts on what the AV 1611 means or should be is demonstrably, you don't know enough to actually have that discussion. All we wanted was evidence. Time after time after time. Can you demonstrate? I would rather you said no. Do you have any way to demonstrate that what you think about God is true? Nope. Cool. Well, thanks for calling to share. But when you say you have evidence and we ask for it, and your response is, we're able to demonstrate that we all move forward by faith. No.
Or my favorite. Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
There needs to be, he's not entirely wrong. It's just that he's equivocating on the usage of faith. Do we all have confidence in the absence of certainty? Yes, we do. And we tend to proportion our confidence level to the evidence if we are wise. If we have a little bit of evidence, then we should be a little bit confident. If we have loads of evidence, then we should be big confident. If we don't really have evidence, we should not be confident. However, is there a position where we have to assume, not have faith, but assume that there are answers out there for us to find? Yes. And the thing that warrants that is that we continue to find answers. It may be that for a particular question, there is no way to find answers. It may be that the God question, is there a God that exists beyond space? It may be that we are forever prohibited from getting a warranted answer to that question. We may never be able to find evidence. We may never be, if the falsification is not falsifiable, or the falsification, if the proposition isn't falsifiable, then it's not testable. But if you're going to say that you have evidence for God and you produce nothing, what are we supposed to do? I don't know.
Have faith. That's what they would like.
There were a couple other potential callers, but we have run way longer than I had actually anticipated. And I know that other people have plenty of things to do. So before I let Shannon point you to all of the ways that you can interact with her in addition to this show and any other news bits, let me go ahead and do the job thing that I'm supposed to do here, which is thank everybody for tuning in. Thank you for calling. Thanks to our moderators and our call screeners for participating in this. Thanks to everybody who contributed via super chats. If you clicked like and subscribe, we're grateful for that. If you interacted in chat, if you share the shorts out there, we appreciate all of those things. This network is dedicated primarily to shows where we're taking live calls. On Monday, there'll be an episode of Skeptalk that will have Erica Gutzik-Gibbon and Jackson Wheat. On Wednesday, I'll be back with a hang-up with Andrew Seidel coming in to talk about church-state separation and what we can expect to see in this upcoming election season. Transatlantic Call-In Show is Thursday starting at 2 o'clock with Katie and Arden. In the meantime, you can go to patreon.com/calltheline to support the show, and you can go to qnaline.com where you can apply to be a contestant. Again, I don't know what we're going to, a champion. You can apply to be a champion on End Boss. Shannon, what announcements do you have?
I like my new cup. It's from the merch
There you
store.
go.
It's my favorite thing. I guess subscribe to my channel. It's called Shannon Q because I have no creativity whatsoever. And I do stuff over there too. Mostly conversations and sciencey stuff and biblical criticism. If that's your cup of tea, then go do that. If it's not, then, whatever.
It is my
I'm the
cup
best
of
at
tea.
self-promotion. The best.
It is my cup
Nailed
of tea,
it.
and tea is my cup of tea, not wine. So I will have a nice big glass of iced tea while I watch Shannon do some stuff. In the meantime, one final huge thank you to the lovely woman down the hall who has my
Real
heart
brains behind
and
this operation.
produced this whole show here and interjected to let me know all the things I missed in messages because I was so easily distracted by the show stuff. So thank you. Thanks everybody for tuning in. You can go check out patreon.com/call the line. Hey, look, there's some of our patron producers. We should get you a fake beard that looks just like mine.
I would wear a fake. I would absolutely wear a fake beard. 100%. I like to talk through these just to see what point I'm going to be at when the show actually ends. You guys nail it every time.